When Clement returned to Ella's side, Benjamin spoke in a tone bordering on the pious. "Coach, I want to learn swordsmanship." Clement stopped in his tracks, looking puzzled. "Young Master Benjamin, what is going on now?" Ella rolled her eyes. "After watching your match, this guy suddenly dreamed of becoming a sword master. He wants to be your apprentice." "My swordsmanship is only at an ordinary level," Clement replied gently. "Why don't you learn from the more skilled Princess Celia?" Ella coughed twice, glancing at Celia, who was engrossed in sewing nearby. "If Celia were to teach us, forget it. I don't even understand what she's saying." Benjamin nodded in agreement. To learn from Celia, one had to understand purity and enter the world of the strong. In short, she didn't speak human language. Benjamin had once asked her how to improve the accuracy of his nen blades, and her only answer was to command the blades to be more self-aware. Celia didn't look up from her knitting, though her needles never faltered. "It's not that I can't speak human language, it's that your purity isn't high enough." On the ring, the next fighter entered. Diona stood ready, a red rose gun slung across his back and a yellow rose sword at his waist. The mouth attached to the gun opened and closed, chattering incessantly. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the performance of Lady Red Rose. Today, you will witness a massacre." "Stop talking," Diona muttered. "I'm building momentum for you." The gun argued. "You're embarrassing me." The red rose swayed defiantly. "Shameful? How am I shameful? I only speak the truth." Across the ring stood Itigo, one of the pale big three, a taciturn man clad in black body armor. In the commentary booth, Erwin cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, the next match is Diona from Frosttown versus Itigo from the east." Diona brings his magic-extinguishing red rose and his destructive yellow rose. Against him, Itigo wields purple flames that can melt steel. "Did you hear that?" Red Rose cried out. "Dragon versus tiger. I'm the dragon and you're the tiger. I think you should study literature," Diona sighed. The referee raised his hand. "Start." Itigo crossed his arms and purple flames surged from his palms. "Death's end." Diona didn't dodge. He aimed the red rose and cleaved the pillar of fire in two. The flames swept past him, charring the arena floor. "Let me introduce us," Red Rose declared loudly. "This spear, the demon-slaying Red Rose, eliminates supernatural forces, and my partner, the destroying Yellow Rose, has unparalleled cutting power. With me as the pilot and Diona as the agile machine, we are destined to be champions." Diona's face darkened. "Who is the mecha?" "You are. I'm the pilot. I command you with my words. When have you ever manipulated me? I'm doing it right now." "See, you're listening." The bickering enlivened the crowd. Even Celia looked up. "This is the first time I've seen such an interesting nen blade." "There's something even more interesting," Benjamin added. "During your recovery, you ate food made with that yellow rose sword." "Oh my!" Celia exclaimed in surprise. Itigo struck again, dispersing his purple flames into countless tiny, swirling afterimages. It was his signature move, Death Illusion. Diona and Red Rose both stared at the phantoms. "The one on the left is real," Diona shouted. "The one on the right is real," Red Rose countered. They began to argue instantly. "Are you blind? The one on the right has its feet off the ground." "You're blind. That shadow is deeper. It's obviously the real thing." As they fought each other, Itigo's true form emerged from the illusion. His fist slammed into Diona, sending him flying out of the ring. Diona tumbled to the ground, his gun flying from his hand and embedding itself in the dirt. "You," Itigo said, looking down at them, "are the most interesting opponents I've ever met." "What's the use of being interesting?" Red Rose snorted. "Winning is what matters." Erwin's voice boomed over the speakers. "Oh dear, what a pity. A disagreement cost them the match. It seems friendship comes first, competition second." Laughter erupted from the audience. Diona and Red Rose lowered their heads in shame as they walked toward the tunnel. Walter was waiting for them at the entrance. "You've completely disgraced the Baron." Benjamin walked over from the VIP section and patted Diona's shoulder. "It's all right. It livened things up. Look how happy the audience is." "Baron," Walter said firmly, "just wait and see how I dedicate my honor to you." "How about your game today?" Benjamin asked. "By the by," Walter replied confidently. The three giants of the Pale Trio gathered. Minos sat in a corner, his left hand wrapped in blood-stained bandages. Rhadamanthus stood by the window, arms crossed. "How could you lose to an old man?" Rhadamanthus asked, his dissatisfaction palpable. "You'll understand when you meet them," Minos replied quietly. "His strength is superior to mine." "I accept my defeat," Itigo interrupted. "That's enough." As long as one of us wins first place, it doesn't matter who, the list for tomorrow is out. Rhadamanthus, you have Aphrodite, a nobody, Rhadamanthus stated, and you, Itigo, Chesvia. Rhadamanthus smiled, then there's no suspense. Benjamin and Chesvia sat together, each focused on their own work. Chesvia was deep into a worn book on the pseudo-magical techniques of the wizard empire, drawing diagrams and taking dense notes. She suspected the wind crown was a form of this ancient technology, but couldn't yet prove it. Benjamin was drafting plans for his departure from the capital, organizing friendship agreements between the royal domain and the western and northern territories. The room was silent save for the scratching of pens. Finally, Benjamin broke the silence. He looked at Chesvia's profile, her silver hair glowing in the candlelight. If I asked you to concede tomorrow's match, would you agree? Chesvia paused. No way, how could I miss something this fun? The Pale Triumvirate. They are indeed connected to the Pale Church, Benjamin said, rubbing his forehead. I interrogated Sylvie myself. You know, no one can keep a secret from me. Chesvia looked up. Your Nen blade is really unfair for non-combat matters. Maybe one day you'll become a camera covering the entire land. That's beside the point, Benjamin sighed. You might find the tournament interesting, but I'm worried you'll get hurt. Just consider it me being dramatic, okay? How could it be considered sentimental? Chesvia asked. She set her pen aside and stood, moving toward Benjamin. She cupped his face in her hands, her thumbs tracing his cheekbones with an intimacy that felt natural to both. Her ruby eyes searched his, so close he could see his own reflection in her pupils. I want you to see my handsome side. How's that for a reason? Benjamin's breath hitched. The door swung open with a bang. Benjamin. Ella marched in, stopping dead at the sight of them. She stared at Chesvia's hands on his face and their proximity. What are you doing? Her voice strained, bordering on an explosion. Chesvia calmly withdrew her hands. I was wiping the dust off his face. Ella's eyes narrowed as she inspected him. Where did that ash come from? It's been wiped off, Chesvia replied simply. Ella grunted, still suspicious. Then why is your face red? It's too hot in here, Benjamin stammered. Ella looked at the cold fireplace, then at the open window where a cool night breeze drifted in. She remained silent for a long beat before declaring, I'll be spending the night here, her gaze fixed firmly on the two of them. The fourth day of the martial arts tournament arrived. The round of 24 had packed the stadium to capacity, with spectators standing in the aisles and chanting for their favorites. Irwin stood in the commentary booth, his voice booming through a megaphone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth day of the world's strongest wind martial arts tournament. Today, the strongest warriors of Lingfeng gather to vie for honor. Battle is the primal instinct of all living beings. He paused for dramatic effect. To be honest, I was so excited I couldn't sleep. If it weren't for the calming herbal tea launched by the Chamber of Commerce, I might not be here. The crowd laughed, though some heckled him to get on with the show or asked about the price of the tea. In the VIP section, the atmosphere was more refined. When Benjamin arrived, the top-tier seats were filled with dignitaries who rarely appeared in public. Londor the elf stood to introduce the guests. Your Excellency. This is Lord Legolas, an elven warrior who hunts demons alone, and this is Lady Scala, leader of the Argonian tribe. Scala, a tall woman with fine scales and golden, vertical pupils, nodded. Nice to meet you. Londor turned to a small figure sitting to Benjamin's left. And this is Queen Hurissa, a lady of great importance in the dwarf kingdoms. The girl was small, barely reaching Benjamin's waist, wearing a dark robe and a crown inlaid with red gems. Her light brown hair was tied in braids. Benjamin was genuinely surprised. He had heard a dwarf queen was arriving, but he hadn't expected someone who looked so much like a young human girl. You're Benjamin Blackwood? Hurissa asked. Her voice was surprisingly mature and soft. It is I, Benjamin replied. This tournament is lively, Hurissa said, surveying the crowd. It's hard to believe such an inclusive event was organized by humans. Most see other races as threats to be expelled. If you want to see the best in the world, you can't be a frog in a well, Benjamin said. Hurissa smiled, an interesting insight. Which contestant does the Baron favor? Before he could answer, she continued, I have faith in the only dwarf in the top 24. His name will surely spread. I like making friends, Benjamin countered diplomatically. It's hard to choose the best among so many I know. I hope your friend won't become an adversary, Hurissa noted. Benjamin laughed. The rosters are out, so it's tough. But friendship first, competition second. The levity faded as the first match was announced. Erwin's voice rose again. The first match, Chesvia of Frosttown against Edigo of the East. Chesvia, the Minister of Agriculture, Medicine, and Research, the chosen one of the Pale Goddess and the Spirit Garden. Chesvia stood in the ring, sweating slightly at the long list of titles. Across from her stood Edigo. The match ignited instantly. Purple flames and white purifying fire collided in the center, masking the fighters in a kaleidoscope of light. As the flames settled, Edigo unleashed his Death's End phantoms, purple humanoids that swarmed Chesvia. You wield the purifying fire of the Pale Goddess, Edigo's voice echoed from the illusions. Why side with the enemy? Chesvia stood tall, her silver hair whipping in the wind. You have no right to say such things. She raised her hand and a bolt of blue-white lightning shattered the phantoms like glass. More bolts followed, tearing through the illusions as if they were paper. Edigo's pupils shrank, the goddess's thunder. Who are you? A bolt struck his true form, piercing his armor and sending smoke rising from his chest. 100 more followed in rapid succession, leaving Edigo trembling as his armor fell away in charred fragments. The goddess sent me to deal with you disloyal, unfilial, unjust, and untrustworthy scoundrels. Chesvia cried. In the VIP seats, Benjamin leaned forward. He watched Edigo, who was swaying but still moving forward through the lightning. Edigo wasn't retreating, he was closing the gap. Benjamin's hand twitched, ready to stop the fight. He knew Chesvia's weakness. Her physical body was that of an ordinary girl. If Edigo reached her for close combat, it would be over in seconds. Edigo's hand reached out, inches from her. I concede, Chesvia said suddenly. The lightning and fire vanished instantly. She stood with her hands at her sides, looking into Edigo's bloodshot eyes. Edigo froze, his fingers half a foot from her throat. Chesvia concedes. The winner is Edigo, the referee shouted. Chesvia turned to leave. Wait, Edigo called out, his voice raspy. What is your relationship with the goddess? Chesvia didn't answer. She walked toward the tunnel where Ella was waiting. Why did you drop out? Ella demanded. You didn't even make the finals. Isn't this an opportunity for Lady Ella to show off? Chesvia teased. Look how good I am to you. A silver tongue, Ella muttered, frowning. Back in the stands, Edigo sat down, his charred skin still smoking and his hands trembling from the electric shock. You win, Radamanthes said. I won, Edigo repeated, staring at his hands, his mind haunted by the image of Chesvia's blood-red eyes. Radamanthus frowned as he looked at Edigo's dejected appearance. You won the match, so why do you look like you lost? Edigo remained silent, offering no explanation for his mood. Don't worry, Radamanthus added, I will help you get revenge. Aphrodite ripped the bandage off his head and let out a long breath. The cloth had been on for days, making his ears itchy and his scalp tingle, feeling like a constant stranglehold whenever he tried to sleep. Now things were much better. Although his hearing remained muffled, he stretched his neck with a satisfying crack, feeling refreshed. Surrounding him were the few remaining members of the Lingyuan Church. With the top 24 competition underway, only he and Sokka remained in the running. Gallon sat nearby, his demeanor extremely somber, his expression suggesting someone owed him 10,000 gold shields. A monk tried to comfort him, but a sharp glare from Gallon silenced the man before he could finish a sentence. Sokka noticed the item Aphrodite was checking, a classic royal wine jug with a leather body and a brass spout. Sokka sighed. You really intend to bring this into the arena? Aphrodite held up the jug, waving it playfully. This is my secret weapon. Whatever makes you happy, Sokka replied, but try to drink with the Baron less often in the future. The people around him have a lot of opinions about you. Who? Aphrodite frowned. Ella, Chesvia, or Walter? Yes, we have both. Aphrodite hung the flask back on his waist. Don't care so much about what others think, it'll make life exhausting. He patted Sokka on the shoulder and strode out toward the light of the arena. Arati watched him go, puzzled. Why does he look so confident? He seems like a completely different person from before. Sokka didn't answer, he didn't have one. As Aphrodite appeared, Erwin's voice boomed through the stadium. He's here, our star player is coming with his flask. Cheers erupted as Aphrodite waved to the crowd with a dashing, composed demeanor. In the VIP section, Hurissa watched the spectacle. He seems to be quite popular. Who knows why, Benjamin replied, watching his friend, but let me introduce you anyway. This is my friend Aphrodite, the bishop of the Church of the Spirit Garden, though you may not have heard of it. Hurissa smiled, I haven't. Irwin's commentary continued to echo. Aphrodite claims to be a close friend of the Baron of Frosttown and a contender for the championship. He paused for effect. Although I remain skeptical of this claim, the audience laughed. His opponent is Rhadamanthus, the contestant who eliminated Bishop Gallon. Rhadamanthus stood across the ring, eyeing the flask at Aphrodite's waist. If you want a drink, you can go down and drink with your Baron, he mocked. Aphrodite weighed the flask in his hand. No need to bluff. You are no match for me, the referee raised his hand. Start. Rhadamanthus didn't hesitate. Gray alert, destructive energy erupted from his body, surging toward Aphrodite like a tsunami, crushing the stone slabs of the arena floor. Aphrodite's thorns surged from beneath his feet, weaving a barrier as thick as arms. The gray shockwave struck the thorns with a dull thud, shattering the wooden shield. The power of the gray alert was clearly exceeding Aphrodite's mental defenses. Your friend looks to be in danger, Hurissa noted. Benjamin leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the ring. This is just the beginning, he still has secret weapons. I think this guy has the makings of a champion. You two seem to have a good relationship, Hurissa remarked. Benjamin didn't answer. Inside, he was getting anxious. If you have a secret weapon, use it quickly. On the ring, Aphrodite dodged a blast and unscrewed his flask. He took a swig, then another and another. By the fourth, the flask was empty. Rhadamanthus stared, bewildered. What are you doing? Aphrodite didn't answer. He hung the empty flask back on his belt as his heart began to race like a rapid drumbeat. His skin flushed deep red from his face to his hands, and heat began to evaporate off his body in the sunlight. This was the Spirit Garden Engine, a name Benjamin had coined. It was the second awakening of his Nen blade, a power he had sensed during his duel with the wolf-headed knight but could only trigger through the carefree impulse he felt when drinking. Here he comes, Benjamin shouted in the VIP box, nearly jumping from his chair. It's Aphrodite, he's invincible. Aphrodite adopted the Linguan fighting style, one finger to the sky, one to the ground, body coiled like a hunting frog. Sokka and the other spectators frowned at the strange, awkward pose. You've forgotten who you are after drinking a couple of ounces of cat pee. Rhadamanthus sneered, gathering gray energy in his palms. Let me wake you up, maximum gray alert. The resulting explosion nearly destroyed half the arena, forcing the audience to cover their eyes. When the smoke cleared, Aphrodite stood still with a slight smile. Tiny, blood-red thorns twined around him, blooming with delicate roses. Rhadamanthus suddenly felt a weakness in his left arm. A red rose thorn had already pierced his flesh, a flower sprouting from his blood-stained skin. A tiger in the heart, yet a rose in the hand, Aphrodite thought, recalling Benjamin's words. Is that all? Rhadamanthus roared, refusing to yield. Show me what else you've got. The crowd began to chant in a deafening roar. Aphrodite, show us something. Aphrodite turned to the audience, arms outstretched like a king. After I said the championship was in my pocket, I heard the rumors. I heard people say Aphrodite is hilarious. The audience laughed, but in my eyes, you are so powerful, Aphrodite. Is what you really think? The venue erupted in cheers. Aphrodite gave a thumbs up to the VIP section. A bold male who drinks heartily in battle, Hurissa said, her dimples deepening as she smiled, is a sight even the dwarves rarely see. Your Majesty, what is this? Benjamin asked. I was praising him, she said seriously. But what did you mean by super explosive return? It's a really powerful move, Benjamin explained. In the ring, Rhadamanthus launched himself forward like a rocket, propelled by a backward burst of gray energy. Aphrodite stood his ground, a rose now dangling from his lips, his body swaying in a rhythmic, dance-like motion. As the fist hurtled toward him, Aphrodite pivoted, tracing a circle on the ground and delivering a precise elbow strike to Rhadamanthus's ribs. He used his opponent's own momentum against him, finding the most vulnerable spot with ease. Rhadamanthus charged again, his strikes raining down like a storm of gray shockwaves. Aphrodite weaved through the onslaught like a fish in water, his movements more like a choreographed performance than a desperate fight. Rhadamanthus sensed the shift immediately. Each of Aphrodite's attacks arrived faster than the last, his movements becoming a blur of unpredictable grace. Inside Rhadamanthus, the Spirit Garden Engine churned, heating his body and sending his blood into a boil. Seeking distance, Rhadamanthus stepped back and spread his arms. Gray energy gathered in his palms, coalescing into a maximum gray alert, a wave of devastating power far surpassing what he had unleashed against Gallon. The energy surged forward like a gray tsunami. Aphrodite met the onslaught with open arms as if welcoming the tide. Blood-red thorns erupted across his body, blooming into roses that shed petals into the gray shockwaves like a crimson snowfall. He and Benjamin called this technique Rose Burst Back, a move designed to ignore impact, defense, and distance alike. Aphrodite burst through the pillar of gray light. Rhadamanthus froze, his body refusing to move as Aphrodite appeared directly before him. A fist tapped Rhadamanthus's face, not a heavy blow, but a rhythmic touch like a dancer marking time. Then came a flurry of elbows, knees, and headbutts. Each strike was light, yet each found a vulnerable nerve. The assault flowed like a melody, leaving Rhadamanthus swaying like a scarecrow in a gale. He tried to strike back, but his fists found only air. He tried to retreat, but his legs failed him. He was a clumsy partner in a dance he didn't understand. Aphrodite even found a moment to take a sip of wine before delivering the finale. His fingers clamped onto Rhadamanthus's throat, ripping into the Adam's apple with sudden, violent force. Rhadamanthus collapsed to his knees, bracing himself against the dirt, his strength vanishing before he could even scream. Aphrodite turned to the crowd, arms wide as he performed a Walden step. The stadium erupted. In the VIP section, Benjamin leaned forward, clenching his fists. "Nice," he whispered. Hurissa glanced at him, noting his excitement. "It seems you two are really close." Benjamin coughed, looking slightly embarrassed. Aphrodite stepped into the tunnel where the Church of the Spirit Garden waited. Arudi approached him, eyes wide. "You actually won." Aphrodite patted his shoulder. "See who won?" Arudi laughed and clapped, joined by Sokka, whose joy was quiet but genuine. In the corner, Galen sat on all fours, staring at the ground. If Aphrodite, the weakest of the bishops, could dismantle the man who had sent Galen flying, what did that say about him? He was drowning in self-doubt until Aphrodite walked past and offered a hand. "Want to learn? I'll teach you." The round of 24 concluded when Ella faced Ferdinand of the Church of the Earth Mother. It was a chaotic display. Ferdinand shifted rapidly between the forms of a giant eagle, a wolf, a bear, and a strange six-legged reptile. Ella simply chased him down, her strikes so consistent that she knocked him out of every form he took. Eventually, Ferdinand reverted to his human self and raised his hands. "You won." Benjamin stretched his stiff neck, his mind buzzing with the images of the day's matches. Hurissa stood as well, her small crown catching the light. "Your Majesty, may I invite you to dinner tonight?" Benjamin asked. "We can discuss our cooperation. Lord Ella will be there as well. Would you mind having one more guest?" Hurissa asked. A young girl, nearly identical to Hurissa with her hair in two long braids, rushed out from behind a door to hug the queen. "Mother. You left me all alone. I'm so bored." "This is Baron Benjamin Blackwood," Hurissa introduced. "And this is my daughter Edith." She insisted on coming along. "Oh, you have a daughter," Benjamin stammered, looking at Hurissa's youthful face. Despite her appearance, he sensed a deep, mature charm. After they left, Benjamin turned to Rondel. "Do you know the Queen's husband?" Rondel lowered his voice. "Your Excellency, her husband died in their first year of marriage. Poisoned, they say. It's a sensitive subject in her country, best not to mention it." Benjamin nodded, watching them depart. A stray thought crossed his mind. Perhaps I'm more suited to be Prime Minister than my lord. He chuckled to himself. The banquet took place in a repurposed noble estate. While Cecilia took the lead in the kitchen, Benjamin assisted, handling the roasting and the flatbreads. Chesvia managed the stir-frying, her wok leaping with flames. Erwin arrived with a shipment of Silver Empire wine and was immediately seduced by the aroma. "Can I stay?" Erwin asked, swallowing hard. "We're friends, aren't we? It's just another set of cutlery," Benjamin replied. The dinner was a lavish affair. Ella and Hurissa spent the meal haggling over steam engines. Ella's opening price was astronomical, and Hurissa countered with a cool, steady gaze. They traded barbs like housewives at a market, but eventually reached a deal for technology exchange. Benjamin interjected only when necessary, eventually offering 2 phased-out Evangelion units as a gesture of goodwill. As the political talk wound down, Benjamin squatted to talk to Edith. "Little sister is so cute. Tell big brother, how old are you?" Edith looked down shyly. 27 years old. Benjamin's smile turned to stone. 27, Chesvia laughed softly. "In dwarf years, she's about 14. "Right," Benjamin said, recovering. He handed her some candy. "I enjoyed talking to you." He looked at Chesvia, noticing blue-white sparks at her fingertips. So direct current or alternating current, the mood among the pale trio was funereal. Minos and Rhadamanthus had been eliminated and Idigo sat in a daze. We have to consider the worst-case scenario, Rhadamanthus said, standing up, directly killing Baron Frost. Are you crazy? Minos hissed, I'm not, we have no way out. If we go back empty-handed, we won't survive the pale theocracy. Killing him won't be easy, Minos countered. He's too well protected. Then we lure them away, Rhadamanthus said. He looked at Idigo. Idigo didn't respond. Idigo finally blinked. Rhadamanthus sighed, seeing the blank look in his eyes. Never mind, we'll talk tomorrow. He slumped into his chair, staring at the ceiling while the three of them sat in a heavy, fractured silence. The round of 12 began with a roar. Irwin stood with a megaphone, his voice booming across the sands. Every contestant will meet their destined opponent. The crowd went wild, waving flags emblazoned with roses for Aphrodite. The first match of the round of 12 was announced, Aphrodite versus Idigo. The two men stood in the ring, one elegant and calm, the other silent and cold. I've been looking forward to this, Aphrodite said, a rose appearing in his hand. Idigo didn't speak, but the purple flames on his body flared up, turning the surrounding air into a blur. The battle was about to begin. The three pale giants gathered at the entrance to the players' tunnel. Rhadamanthus stood in the middle, his gaze fixed on the VIP seats. Minos stood to his left, his right hand still bandaged from the wound Clement had inflicted. Idigo stood to his right, head bowed. Last night, they had devised a plan. If Idigo lost, the three of them would join forces and charge toward Benjamin. It would not be a sneak attack, but a direct assault. The pride of the Chosen Ones prevented them from committing an act of ambush that would bring shame upon their goddess. Although summoned to the Pale Kingdom as warriors of the goddess, their true purpose was to eliminate Benjamin Blackwood, the enemy of the goddess. The chief's account was questionable, but Benjamin had undeniably seized control of Holy Spring territory and tarnished the church's reputation. Rhadamanthus and Minos no longer expected Idigo to win. The man had been in a daze since yesterday. When asked if he was ready, Idigo only replied, I'm thinking about a problem. Goddess, Rhadamanthus whispered, if you are watching, please bless us. In the VIP section, Benjamin asked Chesvia, what are you looking at? Chesvia's gaze was fixed on the tunnel entrance. Those three pale giants over there. My intuition tells me those three mentally unstable people are plotting some kind of evil scheme. Benjamin followed her gaze. Rhadamanthus, Minos, and Idigo were whispering together, occasionally glancing toward the VIP section. I wonder if we're being too prejudiced, Benjamin suggested. They've been behaving well. Is it possible they are really just here for the competition? Absolutely impossible, Chesvia snapped. Benjamin pushed Celia in her wheelchair into the section. She was embarrassed to show herself in the crowded area, but the allure of the battle drew her in. Hurissa waved for Benjamin to sit next to her. Her daughter Edith sat beside her, still clutching the candy Benjamin had given her the day before. I'm ready to award the title of hero to that nameless dwarf who made it to the top 12, Hurissa remarked. Benjamin nodded. He certainly deserves it. The audience had nicknamed the resilient fighter the tough-luck dwarf, a title the man himself likely didn't care about. The matches continued with their usual excitement until the bout between Idigo and Saga. Saga won much more easily than expected. Idigo's death end was entangled by golden threads, and his death illusion was shattered by a galactic explosion. Finally, hit by the illusion fist, Idigo lost his senses and fell into a hallucination. Irwin announced Saga's victory, but his voice suddenly shifted in tone. What's going on? Why are those three fighters from the east suddenly in the ring? A buzz of discussion arose. Rhadamanthus, Minos, and Idigo stood side by side in the ring, facing Benjamin. Are you all ready? Rhadamanthus asked his companions. Minos nodded, but Idigo remained silent. Although I hate to admit it, we might die here, Rhadamanthus continued, but this is a battle for honor. If we die in this tournament, it will be a lucky thing. Maybe I had a lot of fun, Minos replied. You're quite open-minded. What can I do if I can't figure it out? I can't win anyway, Rhadamanthus sighed. Idigo suddenly spoke. I'd rather get the truth from her than kill Benjamin. The others looked at him in confusion. That silver-haired woman, Idigo said, his gaze falling on Chesvia. I want to know who she is. Rhadamanthus frowned. At a time like this, what else do you want to say? I'm just wondering if what we're doing is completely meaningless, Idigo admitted. Maybe it's even bringing shame to the goddess. Has your faith wavered? Minus demanded. Edigo shook his head, purple flames dancing in his palm. My faith remains unwavering. I just wonder if the traders aren't actually from the Holy Spring territory. Perhaps the truth is different from what the master says. Ridiculous, Rhadamanthus said. Are you saying the goddess chose a traitor as the head of the church? The head seat was not chosen by the goddess at all, Edigo said calmly. No one knows better than us what price our goddess paid to save humanity. The two fell silent. Edigo continued, that woman. I finally figured out where the sense of déjà vu came from. On the day the goddess bestowed the blade of thought upon me, I received a name from her. Aren't yours also given names? Rhadamanthus touched his arm. Gray alert. Minos spoke up, puppet strings. It was that feeling of being chosen and recognized that had made them devout. So Edigo said, is it possible we've been on the wrong side all along? Rhadamanthus looked at the crowd. Here's the problem. We're already in the ring, everyone's watching us. The atmosphere is right. Should we still force Benjamin to be killed? In the VIP section, Benjamin turned to Chesvia. What are they talking about? The audience has already started swearing. Shouts and empty cups were being hurled at the ring. How about we send someone to chase them away? Chesvia suggested. Before Benjamin could act, Aphrodite rushed from the tunnel. He leaped onto the ring, pointing a finger at the three men. I saw it all. Your evil plans can't be hidden from me, the lip-reading master. Aphrodite's voice boomed across the arena. I see your evil plans clearly. His finger nearly poked Rhadamanthus in the nose. Rhadamanthus and the others exchanged glances. Their plan was only halfway through, and now this man with the unhealed ear was interfering. Rhadamanthus clenched his fist, gathering a gray shockwave. You were just discussing Minister Chesvia, Aphrodite shouted. There's no room for excuses. Look at your lecherous eyes. You clearly want to drag her back to be a saintess of the Pale Church. Rhadamanthus's face turned from red to purple. I'm going to keep you bedridden for 3 months. Aphrodite tilted his head mockingly. What is the defeated general saying? I can't hear him. Can't you speak a little louder? Attack! Rhadamanthus roared. Gray shockwaves, puppet strings, and purple flames erupted, surging toward Aphrodite. The warrior reached for his wine jug, unscrewing the lid to take a drink, but Rhadamanthus's fist slammed into his stomach before he could swallow. He spat wine over Rhadamanthus's face, but the assault didn't stop. A second punch sent Aphrodite flying, his flask spinning away. Minos's puppet strings snagged his ankle, slamming him back down. Edigo's flames scorched his clothes. He was knocked down repeatedly, vomiting up the wine he'd consumed. No sportsmanship. He managed to shout before being kicked to the edge of the ring where he lay motionless. Rhadamanthus panted, withdrawing his fist. That's satisfying, let's go. The three jumped from the stage and charged toward the VIP seats. Soldiers surged to stop them, but the ordinary guards were like paper, sent flying by the overwhelming strength of the Pale Trio. In the VIP section, Edith clung to her mother, Hurissa, who placed a protective arm around the girl's shoulder. Hurissa's gaze shifted to Benjamin, her eyes silently demanding to know his plan. Celia, sitting in her wheelchair, murmured that if the situation wasn't handled properly, it could spark a diplomatic incident. Benjamin remained composed as the three figures charged toward them. Despite the presence of the kingdom's strongest warriors, the trio had chosen this moment to strike. Walter and Diona immediately moved to flank Benjamin. Walter's arms transformed, enormous scales and sharp dragon claws gleaming in the sun, while Diona gripped his red and yellow roses, the sentient weapons shimmering with readiness. Benjamin didn't bother to stand. He simply turned his chair to face the attackers. Who ordered you here? Rhadamanthus opened his mouth to speak, but Ediaco cut him off. No one gave the order, I just want an answer. His eyes locked onto Chesvia, who stood behind Benjamin with a calm, detached expression. Then stand there and ask, Benjamin countered. You don't need to get this close. This issue needs to be addressed face-to-face, Ediaco insisted. Then let's wait until after the match. I can arrange for you to meet. I can't wait. Ediaco's sentence died in his throat. Celia moved. She placed her hands on her armrests, leaned forward, and stood up. The fabric covering her knees fell to the floor, ignored. She held a knitting needle, sharp at both ends like a weapon. A chill ran down the spines of the three giants, an instinctive reaction of prey facing a predator. You want to make a move here? Celia asked. Nervousness or perhaps pure instinct drove Rhadamanthus to act. Gray alert, he roared, unleashing his ultimate move. Celia raised her hand, the knitting needle twirling as the thread traced a circle in the air. She brought it down like a sword, cleaving through the gray shockwave. The energy parted around her, snapping the VIP railings but leaving her untouched. Edith screamed as Hurissa pulled her close. Minas struck next, firing puppet strings from his fingertips to bind her limbs. Celia's needles moved in a graceful arc, the thread ends dancing as they severed the invisible silk. The broken threads scattered like wind-blown webs. Ediako's purple flames surged forward like a dragon's maw. Celia thrust her needle backward, the tip striking the heart of the fire. The flame froze, then dissipated like a withering flower. She leveled her needles at them. Shall we continue? In the commentary booth, Erwin's mind raced. The audience was in a frenzy, wondering who the woman from the wheelchair was. He needed to spin this. Ladies and gentlemen, he boomed into his megaphone. Wasn't the performance wonderful? The crowd hesitated, confused. It seems the Pale Triumvirate's plan to seize the Saintess will require more practice. Erwin joked, our Saintess isn't so easy to take away. She'll have to withstand at least 3 moves from the princess. The confusion turned to thunderous applause. One more. The crowd shouted. Aphrodite arrived at the VIP section, limping from an earlier injury. Surrender, you're surrounded, he shouted, then stopped dead. The 3 giants were kneeling on one knee before Chesvia in a posture of absolute religious devotion. Baron, what's going on? I really can't answer that, Benjamin admitted. Celia returned to her wheelchair, unhurriedly resuming her knitting as if the battle had never happened. Chesvia stood before the kneeling men, hands on her hips. She was suppressing a laugh. Because I am the Pale Saintess, she announced loudly. I will protect everything the Pale Goddess has to offer. Rhadamanthes and Minas looked up with newfound fanaticism. Ediako's eyes were red with emotion. He had sensed something in Chesvia, not just power but the soul of a goddess. He realized then that his master's claims of her being a traitor were lies. The others simply followed Ediako's lead. If the authority on piety knelt, they would too. So what's the situation? Aphrodite asked. They've stopped fighting, converted, probably, Benjamin said. Then how can I take revenge? Aphrodite grumbled. The matches resumed, Erwin's commentary keeping the crowd in their seats. Rumors began to fly that the tournament winner would earn the right to challenge Princess Celia. Little Edith peeked out from behind her mother, looking at Celia with adoration. She ran over and squatted by the wheelchair. Your Highness, she whispered, you are so amazing. Celia stopped knitting. Thank you, she said softly. Edith ran back to hug Hurissa's waist. Mother, aren't you just as amazing? Since you're a princess and she's a princess, you must be the same, right? Benjamin's eyes lit up with mischief. Edith, didn't you know? Your mother is a renowned and powerful figure here. Hurissa glared at him, but Benjamin continued in a somber, mysterious tone. It is said that 10 years ago, Queen Hurissa and Princess Celia were at the top of the Forbidden City, a very high mountain with a tower. They wielded 2 weapons, one supremely powerful and the other supremely flexible. They fought for 3 days and 3 nights without a victor, becoming a legend. Edith's eyes shone like stars. Really? Benjamin slipped a candy into the girl's hand, ignoring Hurissa's pleading look for help. Celia joined in, her eyes filled with a maternal glow. It's true, it was because of that battle that I put down my sword. Hurissa was stunned. She had never been to the Forbidden City or fought Celia, but the two spoke with such sincerity that even she began to doubt her own memory. Nearby, Rondal and the other elves watched with profound respect, and even the dwarven guards stood up straight. Benjamin clapped his hands, satisfied. All right, that's the end of the story. Want to watch the match with your big brother? This match will decide the final 6. Rhadamanthus felt he had knelt a little too quickly. It wasn't that he doubted the connection between Chesvia and the Pale Goddess. As a believer personally bestowed with a mind blade, he could sense the truth. The woman's aura was like a flame compressed to its extreme, gentle on the surface, but radiating an intense, explosive heat. To him, she was the legendary saintess. He couldn't help but feel that his dignity had suffered. He imagined a more heroic scenario where he fought Celia for 300 rounds before being overwhelmed by the saintess's majesty. Instead, he was kneeling like a man begging for mercy. He glanced at Edigo, who was kneeling with a devout, tearful expression, and felt a pang of envy. The first to swear allegiance is always the one most remembered. Ediako was currently spilling everything, details about the Pale Church, the chief, and secret missions. He was a blessed warrior, but one kept in the dark about core secrets, a henchman tricked by the leadership. Chesvia remained calm, adopting Benjamin's habit of weaving grand narratives. The current head of the Pale Church has betrayed his ancestors and usurped the goddess's position, she declared. I am a wisp of the goddess's consciousness descended to earth. I chose Benjamin as my representative to bring a better tomorrow to this land. She didn't quite believe her own words, but Edigo was moved to tears, his hands trembling with conviction. Satisfied, Chesvia clapped her hands. All right, I'm going to watch the game now. The battle for the top 6 was in full swing. Aphrodite faced Sokka, Clement took on a nameless dwarf, and Ella fought Walter. Every match made Benjamin's heart race. The first bout was an internal struggle for the Spirit Garden Church. Sokka, the strongest bishop, faced Aphrodite, who had long been considered the weakest. Galon watched from the stands with a mix of envy and admiration. He had always expected to be the one standing across from Sokka. The fight was brutal. Sokka wove nets of golden light and unleashed his galactic explosion, while Aphrodite's thorns struggled and regrew within the shimmering net. They abandoned weapons for hand-to-hand combat, thrilling the crowd. In the VIP section, Benjamin watched with sweaty palms, torn between a respected rival and a friend. I'll support whoever has the most fun winning, Chesvia said simply. Ultimately, Aphrodite's endurance and his habit of stealing drinks mid-battle gave him the edge. He seized a weakness in Sokka's defense and unleashed a winning combo. Rather than striking a boastful pose, he respectfully helped the senior bishop to his feet. The other matches were just as intense. Ella was forced off the stage by Walter, who had transformed into a terrifying lava dragon. Clement, unfortunately, strained his back mid-fight and had to withdraw. Benjamin and Ella quickly silenced those who dared to whisper accusations of match-fixing. The final round-robin tournament between the 3 remaining contenders was a blur of chaos. Aphrodite fought while drinking, Walter breathed fire, and the nameless dwarf cursed the humans for not even knowing his name. When the scores were tallied, Aphrodite took first, Walter second, and the dwarf third. The awards ceremony began as the sun dipped low. Benjamin stood in the center of the ring, holding the champion's sword, the edge of the Renewal Kingdom, which gleamed in the fading light. Third place, Benjamin announced, hanging a bronze medal around the neck of the nameless dwarf. Regardless of race or status, this honor belongs to you. Furthermore, in the name of the Baron of Frosttown, you are granted the honor of a Knight of the Kingdom. The dwarf's eyes widened in shock. He was an ordinary man who had come to try his luck, and now he was the first non-human knight of Lingfeng. Congratulations, Benjamin smiled. The Queen also has a reward for you. How about a meal after this? Next was Walter. Benjamin pinned the silver medal to his chest. Walter remained expressionless, but Benjamin patted his shoulder. It's just a temporary setback. We'll win it back next time. Come on, give me a smile. Walter's mouth twitched in a way Benjamin chose to interpret as a grin. Benjamin gestured to a set of custom armor. I adjusted those myself, just like when we first started in Frosttown. Finally, Benjamin approached Aphrodite, who wore an arrogant, irritating smirk. It's a waste to give a sword to someone who doesn't use one, Benjamin teased, pretending to pull the blade away. Aphrodite immediately turned solemn, standing straight as a true warrior. May your future be like this sword, Benjamin's voice echoed, renewing the kingdom's edge. As Aphrodite took the hilt, the musicians of the Celebration Church struck up a sacred, triumphant anthem. Aphrodite broke into a broad grin, raising the sword high and waving it so wildly he nearly struck Walter. The excitement of the day spilled into the streets. Storytellers were already exaggerating Aphrodite's drinking habits, claiming he had drained the entire city's wine supply. In the central square, a grand banquet was underway. Benjamin sat at the head of the table, flanked by Queen Hurissa and Princess Celia. Little Edith sat by her mother, focused on licking frosting off a piece of cake. Across from them, Chesvia and Ella were locked in a quiet argument, punctuated by sparks of electricity from Chesvia's fingers and Ella's fork glowing red. Benjamin decided to ignore it. In the corner, Walter stared at his plate of roast meat, his mind on the new armor waiting in his room. Beside him, Aphrodite kept checking his gold medal, making sure it was still there, much to Walter's annoyance. At the far end, the nameless dwarf sat surrounded by a new retinue of guards. Your Excellency, Hurissa said, looking toward the dwarf. He is the first champion I have ever seen who cried for a full quarter of an hour at an awards ceremony. Third place, Benjamin corrected. Third place is also a championship, Hurissa countered. In my country, it is just as honorable, though the prize money differs. Benjamin raised his glass. I appreciate your open-mindedness, Your Majesty. Thank you for attending. I'm just here for the fun, she replied, sipping her drink, but I want to see more. When is the next one? I haven't decided, but you'll have a unique invitation, Benjamin promised. I'll look forward to it. This land is too dull, it needs excitement. Benjamin refilled her glass. What do you think of the wine? It's a fine vintage that Aphrodite borrowed from Bishop Sokka's private cellar. It's been aged 10 years. Stolen? Hurissa asked with a smirk. He wrote an IOU, Benjamin said smoothly. Hurissa laughed, taking another sip. It's really good. Benjamin poured Queen Hurissa another glass. Your Majesty, do you usually drink alcohol? I didn't drink much, she replied. That's a real shame, Benjamin sighed. Dwarves not drinking is like elves not shooting arrows or humans not eating. Don't you think so? Hurissa looked at him with amusement. Are you trying to get a dwarf to drink? I'm not trying to urge you to drink, I'm encouraging you to experience life. Benjamin raised his glass and clinked it against hers. Life is short, so enjoy it while you can. Hurissa gave him a helpless look, then drained the glass in one gulp. Benjamin immediately refilled it. Your Majesty, do you enjoy a lively atmosphere? So what kind of liveliness do you like? Is it the kind where a group of people dance around a campfire, or the kind where you sit in a corner and watch others have fun? Hurissa thought for a moment, the latter. Then you can enjoy yourself today. Benjamin pointed toward the crowd. Look, that little girl stealing cake over there is your daughter. That one fighting with the runner-up for meat is the champion, and that one threatening Ella with electricity is our Minister of Agriculture. You're sitting in the best seat, watching the best show. Hurissa smiled and drank another glass. Benjamin poured himself one as well. Your Majesty, what was your dream when you were a child? Dream. It's what you wanted to do most when you were young. Hurissa paused, a hint of intoxication softening her features. I used to dream of opening a flower shop. When I was very young, I often went to the palace gardens and discussed with the gardeners how to cultivate flowers to be big and beautiful. I thought that was the most interesting thing. Later, I became the crown prince, and my dream of becoming a florist was gone. Benjamin quietly replaced the regular liquor with Lingyuan happy water. So do you still want to open one now? Hurissa looked at the liquid in her glass. Sometimes I think about it. When you retire, you can open one in the capital. I'll provide you with the best location where it'll be packed with customers every day. Hurissa gave a genuine smile. You really know how to persuade people to drink. I'm not trying to persuade you to drink, Benjamin said, clinking glasses with her again. I'm trying to make you happy. As the night wore on, Hurissa's face flushed and her voice grew louder. She began to vent about her annoying ministers, the gossiping nobles, and a distant relative who had been pestering her for marriage. Benjamin listened without interruption, nodding and pouring drinks, keeping the focus entirely on her personal happiness. Halfway through the banquet, 3 uninvited guests appeared. The pale trio had changed their attire and made a grand entrance. Aphrodite was the first to notice them, standing up with a sharp tone. What are you doing here? Come and eat, Rhadamanthus replied simply. You guys, we are the contestants, Minos added. Our names are on the banquet menu, Aphrodite chuckled. If you want to eat next to a champion like me, you'd better be tested. He produced several jars of wine from under the table, lining them up like a challenge. The 3 giants ignored him, their gazes landing on Chesvia. She was in the middle of an argument with Ella but turned to face them. Drink it, Chesvia said seriously. If you can't drink it, you'll be disgracing the pale goddess. That was all the permission they needed. The 3 giants engaged in a fierce drinking battle with the bishops of the Church of the Spirit Garden. Rhadamanthus faced off against Aphrodite, Minos against Sokka, and Ediaco against Galon. Arete scrambled to pour drinks, his arms aching from the pace. The scene was more intense than any match in the ring. Hurissa was eventually completely drunk. She leaned back in her chair with a slight smile, muttering, "You're really good at persuading people to drink." Edith watched her mother, looking uncertain. Benjamin summoned a maid to help the queen back to her quarters. Edith followed closely, glancing back at Benjamin as if worried he might disappear. Once they were gone, Benjamin sidled up to Chesvia. What are you going to do with those 3? They can't just be hired thugs, can they? Chesvia looked at him. Didn't I say that I am a powerful figure in the Pale Church? I've been thinking about it recently, and I think there's some truth to that. These three may not hold much sway among the Pale believers, but they do have some prestige. I want them to infiltrate the Pale Church and help Holy Spring territory become the Orthodox Pale Church. Let the religion deal with its own problems. We progressives shouldn't waste our energy on them. Benjamin chuckled. All right, since the goddess herself has spoken, of course I have no objections. In the western frontier, Alkaya sat in his study, weighing Benjamin's reply in his hand. The envelope was heavy and bore the seal of Frosttown. He opened it and pulled out a handwritten summary of the world's greatest martial arts tournament. Alkaya leaned back, crossing his legs as he read. He was satisfied with the intensity of the battles and the talent within the kingdom of Lingfeng. He felt as if he were watching the matches live, though he felt a pang of regret that his own warriors hadn't participated. He noted the name of the commander of the Northern Wolf Riders, his father-in-law's general, who had barely made the top 100. Sigh, all bark and no bite, he muttered, turning the page. The second page listed the contestants. His brow furrowed at the number of religious figures. He felt uneasy about the influence of the churches. Why can't these goddesses focus on blessing warriors? What's with all this church stuff? On the third page, his eyes widened. Dwarves were ranked third. Dwarves, how did that race who can only fight with their own knees get to the top? Is there some kind of conspiracy? He realized the kingdom held far more talent than he had imagined. Benjamin got another one, he sighed, knowing Benjamin wouldn't let such talent go to waste. He considered hosting his own tournament but realized it would only look like a power struggle. Sigh, he had all the advantages, perfect timing, perfect location, and the right people. Why couldn't I have seized the opportunity? He turned to Benjamin's serious letter. It was a formal agreement to cease internal strife and unite against external enemies. He wondered how someone so precise and capable could be an ally to his sister, Celia, whom he had always viewed as a muscle-brained fool. Then he reached the final sentence, Your Highness Alkaya, I believe we are kindred spirits. Why not choose an auspicious day to meet in Frost Town? Alkaya fell silent. It was a direct invitation to the heart of Benjamin's stronghold. Was it a test of courage? That evening, Alkaya dined at Charles's residence. His confidants were boasting and drinking around the long table. Alkaya put down his glass and cleared his throat. What do you think my ranking would be if I participated in the world's greatest martial arts tournament? Charles's confidants exchanged glances before Charles raised his glass. Your Highness, if you participate, what chance does Aphrodite have of winning? A servant entered and whispered to Charles. Charles's expression shifted. He leaned toward Alkaya. Your Highness, he lowered his voice, your wife sent someone to ask if you are here. Alkaya's expression shifted with a subtlety that only Charles could detect. His lips and eyes twitched, and the fingers gripping his wine glass trembled. Tell her, Alkaya said, his voice forced into a calm mask, that I'm not here. Charles hesitated, caught off guard. Your Highness, this. Just say I'm not here, Alkaya repeated, his tone sharpening to end the discussion. Charles bowed and relayed the instructions to a servant, who hurried out. Alkaya took several slow sips of his wine, staring out into a moonless, pitch-black night. Continue, he prompted. Where were we? Speaking of Your Highness, Charles resumed smoothly, if you were to participate, the championship would undoubtedly be yours. Alkaya's lips curled into a faint smirk. Yes, that one. Go on. Sunlight hit Benjamin's face, prompting him to pull the covers over his head. The peace was shattered by Ella's voice, booming like a thunderclap. Get up. Look at the time, still sleeping. Benjamin poked his head out, squinting. You're not the one cooking, so why the early wake-up call? Can't I wake you if you don't eat? Ella snapped, hands on her hips. Queen Hurissa is leaving today. She came specifically for your conference, and you haven't even shown your face to say goodbye. Benjamin sighed and sat up. Okay, hurry up, the food's getting cold, Ella shouted over her shoulder as she marched out. Benjamin dressed quickly, wondering why Ella was always so eager for mealtimes despite never touching a stove. In the square, Queen Hurissa's caravan was ready. Large wagons and guards surrounded the two prototype steam engines, which were securely fastened under heavy canvas. Hurissa had promised to send master dwarf craftsmen to the capital, a prospect that pleased Benjamin immensely given their unmatched forging skills. After breakfast, the farewells began. Young Edith seemed to be collecting a leg-hugging achievement, moving from Benjamin to Ella, Chesvia, Walter, Diona, and finally Aphrodite. When she reached Benjamin again, her eyes were red. Big brother, she sobbed, you must come to our country to play sometime. Definitely, Benjamin promised, crouching to meet her gaze. You'll be my guide? Hurissa watched them with a soft smile. This child really likes you. I like her too, Benjamin said, standing up. A faint, electrifying crackle sounded behind him. A chill ran down his spine. Without turning, he quickly added, of course, I like you very much too, Queen Hurissa, with great admiration. The crackling grew louder and a localized heat began to roast his back. Hurissa gave him a knowing look, shook his hand, and boarded her carriage. Edith waved from the window until they disappeared around the corner. Benjamin turned to find Chesvia and Ella staring at him with eyes like daggers. To be honest, Ella said, you don't actually like the dwarf style, do you? That is a blatant slander, Benjamin replied solemnly. I was just following my mentor's advice that women are like fine wine, getting better with age. Ella's eyes widened. You like older men? It's not that exaggerated. I was joking, Benjamin waved his hands dismissively. Sensing their lingering suspicion, he changed the subject. Don't you two have work? Ella checked the sky and headed off to oversee the railway construction. Chesvia departed to manage the pale trio, who were currently passing their time in a local inn practicing martial arts and playing cards while they awaited her orders. Benjamin found Erwin buried under a mountain of paperwork. Brother, what brings you here? Erwin asked. I wanted to talk, Benjamin said, taking a seat. Have you ever thought about making the capital change according to your wishes? Erwin looked stunned. I was a small lord, Benjamin. I've always lived at the mercy of others. Things are different now, Benjamin said seriously. I want you to be the temporary representative of the capital after I leave. Be bold, old man. At 50, it's time to fight. I'm not 50 yet, Erwin corrected. Perfect. Plenty of time then. Benjamin leaned forward. I must return to Frosttown. That is my home and my power base. The capital is in ruins and needs someone I trust implicitly. You've been traveling the kingdom and your daughter runs your territory. You're free, capable, and the ideal person for this. Erwin took several deep breaths, moved by the trust. I worry if I can govern it well. I trust your judgment, Benjamin insisted. With the new rail network, we can be back here anytime. Treat it like a larger version of your own territory. Okay, Erwin finally agreed. I'll do it. The arrangement was set. Frosttown and Ironforge would provide the garrison, while Erwin handled taxation, personnel, and construction, reporting major matters to Benjamin. With the capital secured, Benjamin prepared for the journey back to the place he had built from nothing. The mountain cold was a physical weight, silencing the world. An old man trudged through ankle-deep snow, carrying a bundle of firewood toward his mud-plastered hut. It was a hard life, but it was free from the whims of nobles. Inside, his wife stirred a pot of thin stew. Add some turnips, the old man suggested. There aren't many left, she grumbled. Let's nourish that child, he said, crouching by the stove. She looked so thin, his wife sighed but fetched a few turnips from the cellar. They had lived here 40 years, losing their own daughter to a previous winter. He had found this new girl buried in the snow, nothing visible but a tuft of blue hair. He didn't know who she was and she didn't speak, but he couldn't let the goddess take another daughter from him. He counted his meager savings, bronze and silver shields, planning a trip to town for medicine and winter clothes. The old man's wife scolded him for his wastefulness, her voice sharp with the stress of managing a household on nothing. He listened in silence, offering no defense. Once her lecture ended, she took the cotton coat he had purchased and sat under the dim lamp, sewing it smaller to fit the girl. "And Lige, come out for dinner," she called. The blue-haired girl emerged and sat by the stove. The woman ladled a bowl of soup containing a few meager pieces of turnip and cabbage. And Lige took a sip and frowned. "It's too salty." "If it's too salty, drink more water," the wife replied, adding another turnip to the girl's bowl. The old man watched them from across the table, his own bowl containing nothing but clear, salty broth. He wondered what his wife had added to the pot today. The wealthy people down the mountain use a type of stone called honeycomb briquette to start fires, the wife said suddenly, her eyes drifting to the messy pile of firewood. "I heard one piece can last most of the day. If we had that, we wouldn't have to go out to collect firewood every day." The old man knew of the briquettes from Frosttown, smoke-free, odorless, and efficient, but they were a luxury he couldn't afford. He promised to buy some when they had spare money, but his wife only sighed, knowing the reality of their poverty, and Lige watched the scene with quiet detachment. Humans were fascinating to her. She wondered what drove them to such madness, treating a total stranger like their own flesh and blood. A few days later, the fragile peace broke. While checking traps, the old man tripped and fell against a rock. He had to drag himself back through the snow, leaving a long, serpentine trail behind him. When he reached the doorway, his wife dropped her spoon in horror. The injury did not heal, his legs swelled, and a high fever took hold. He became delirious, calling out for his daughter and his wife in turns. His wife stayed by his side until her eyes were red and swollen from exhaustion. And Lige stood at the door, observing the slow approach of death. One morning, the old man woke with a sudden, clear lucidity. He looked at his haggard wife and then at the blue-haired girl. He knew his time was up. "And Lige, come here," he rasped. The girl walked to his bedside. "I'm going to die," he told her. His wife collapsed into tears, her shoulders heaving. "Would you like to come with us?" and Lige asked. The old man looked confused. "Where to?" "Go to a place where there is no cold or hunger," and Lige said, her gaze steady. "I will share this blessing equally with everyone on this land." The old man thought of his late daughter, the eternal snow of the mountains, and the endless struggle for warmth. He had known from the moment he saw in Lige that she was something fundamentally different, but in this moment he didn't care. "Will it hurt?" he asked. "It doesn't hurt," she promised. The old man turned to his wife. "Old woman, do you want to go?" "Sigh, this is how my life is going to be," she replied. "Wherever you go, I'll go." "Then let's go," the old man said, and Lige reached out and a black and white flower ignited at her fingertips. It drifted down onto the old man. Instantly, his pain vanished. His skin turned pale and his body temperature plummeted. When his eyes opened, they burned with black and white flames. The transformation took his wife as well. Her wrinkles smoothed away, her white hair returned to a deep black, and her hunched back straightened. And Lige looked at the two rational deathborn she had created. She had not given them death, but a new, eternal life. They would never hunger or feel the bite of the mountain cold again. "Let's go to those neglected corners," she commanded. This shift in the world had begun even before the great tournament. At that time, Evelyn was riding her chestnut horse toward Pearl City, seething with frustration. While she was stuck traveling for work, Benjamin had organized a massive martial arts tournament back in the capital. She felt excluded and bitter. Her horse, sensing her mood, nibbled loudly on grass whenever they stopped. Evelyn couldn't help but compare the animal to the new steam railcars. The machines didn't need to eat, sleep, or poop, they just ran as long as there was coal. "Why am I the only one excluded?" she muttered, stomping her foot in frustration. The horse bolted, nearly throwing her off. Upon reaching Pearl City, she was met at the gate by guards in northern armor. "Miss Evelyn," one asked. "It's me, please follow me." The guard led her through the quiet streets to a gray stone building. Evelyn felt a surge of nerves. She was here to see Hill, her former boss and the leader of the Grey Eagle mercenary group. She was here to resign. Hill had been the one to recommend her to Benjamin, and while she owed him for the opportunity, her life as a secretary in Frosttown was far more comfortable than being a scout. As they walked, her former colleague kept glancing at her. "Is there something on my face?" she finally asked. The man smiled sheepishly. "It's nothing. I just think you've gotten a bit rounder. You look better than before." Evelyn touched her cheeks. "It's probably because of the rice-fed people of Frosttown. You should visit sometime. The Baron would welcome you." The colleague's expression turned subtle. "Oh, I see." They reached a door and the guard gestured for her to enter alone. The room was thick with the warmth of a crackling fireplace. Hill sat in a large chair with his back to the door, a dark red blanket draped over his shoulders. His hair had grown longer since Evelyn last saw him. "Lord Hill," Evelyn said, staying near the entrance. "Evelyn," Hill's voice was calm. "It's been a while since I've heard your voice." "May I ask the purpose of my recall?" Direct as ever, Hill remarked. "How is the task Benjamin assigned you? I need to know his actions, his behavior, and his intentions." "I don't want him outside my control. Everything is fine," Evelyn answered instantly. Hill let out a sarcastic huff. "Everything's all right. You've been replying to fewer and fewer letters lately." "My status with the Baron is special," Evelyn lied smoothly. "Many people are watching me. It's difficult to pass on information." Hill sighed, a sound of genuine disappointment. "Don't pretend with me. If information is so hard to get, why are most of your letters just product promotions? I even received a message from Benjamin saying you've been eating too many snacks and gaining weight." Evelyn froze, a cold sweat breaking out. "Baron, why did you betray me?" She thought frantically. She looked down at her stomach, wondering if her thick winter clothes were really hiding as much as she hoped. do you know what? Hill continued, his voice tight. Over the years, the intelligence you've given me hasn't even come close to what Benjamin has mentioned to me in our daily communications. Far away in Frosttown, Evelyn sat in her office chair, a piece of strawberry cake frozen halfway to her mouth. The voice coming through the communication channel made it impossible to swallow. For the sake of the help I gave you years ago, Hill's voice softened. Tell me the truth. Have you really betrayed me, Evelyn? Absolutely impossible. Evelyn resorted to stubbornness, her heart racing. Benjamin wrote to me that you eat 5 meals a day in Frosttown, Hill countered. Breakfast, lunch, afternoon tea, dinner, and a midnight snack. He said your favorite is strawberry cake and you can eat 5 slices at a time. Evelyn hesitated. Well, I was just too tired from work and needed to replenish my energy. He also said you've gained 12 pounds. How could that be? Even if there were, it would be muscle. Hill took a piece of paper from her drawer and unfolded it. This is the letter you sent me last month. There was a flyer inside that said buy 2, get 1 free for specialty honey cakes. That is indeed a local specialty, Evelyn stammered. Specialty product, then explain why this flyer says it's supervised by the Silver Creek Merchant Guild and made in Silver Creek. This isn't even a product of Frosttown, yet you just shoved it in. Evelyn's stubbornness gave way. My lord, please let me explain. Explain what? Hill folded the flyer back into the drawer. Explain why you went from being an inside man to an advertising salesman, or why you went from eating 2 meals a day to 5. Evelyn lowered her head in shame. I accept the lack of intelligence. Hill's voice wavered. I'll assume you're being watched. I even accept the advertising as a form of intelligence. But what you shouldn't have done was not even bother with a perfunctory response and instead sent me leaflets from other territories. Evelyn was devastated. She couldn't remember when she'd slipped that flyer into the letter. Maybe it was that afternoon when she was organizing files and casually tossed it in. She remembered those honey cookies from Silver Creek being quite tasty. In the past, Hill's voice regained its calm. The Grey Eagle mercenary group would not tolerate traitors. Especially perfunctory traitors, she sighed. But now all I need is for you to tell me what exactly made you choose him. In what ways is he better than me? Evelyn was stunned. She had mentally prepared to be killed instantly, but this price wasn't unacceptable. After all, this was just one of her 8 bodies. She could make up for the loss by eating more cake later. Realizing her secrets were fully exposed, she stopped pretending. Her purpose in coming was to resign anyway. Since you've asked, let me tell you the truth, Evelyn said, her voice becoming steady. Knowing people well and using them wisely and caring for the common people. That's where he surpasses you. Compared to you, the Baron is always indecisive and too kind. He even trusts someone like me with questionable origins. Although the way he tests me is unique, she recalled how Benjamin and Sullivan had kept her dealing with civil disputes for months. She had thought it was a test of her loyalty, but Benjamin later confessed they were just so short-handed they would have made their enemies work overtime. Knowing people and using them wisely, Hill repeated. Don't you think I've done that, Lord Hill? If I may be so bold, Evelyn said, you have never truly trusted us. Power is always firmly in your own hands. All important matters are decided by you alone and our opinions are ignored. Hill's smile vanished. So you care about the common people? For nobles, that's not a good compliment, but I am not a nobleman, Evelyn replied decisively. Most people in the kingdom are not. That is why I chose him. You may have forgotten that I once followed you because of your actions against the nobility. I will never forget my father, who was whipped to death simply for walking on a noble's path. The room fell silent. Hill placed her fingers on the armrest. Evelyn, that's all in the past, Evelyn interrupted. But do you know? In Frosttown, the roads newly built under the Baron's leadership are accessible to everyone, regardless of status, without any cost. I was personally involved in it. In my time with him, I have realized my own significance. I am on the right path. Hill was left speechless. She could have refuted Evelyn as a noble or a mercenary leader, but she could not refute her from the perspective of a commoner. Hill realized she had become the very thing she once fought against to preserve her status. I didn't know he did so much, Hill's voice wavered. Maybe it's because I'm too far away from him. I focused all my energy on fighting the northern nobles and neglected everything else. She stood up and walked slowly toward Evelyn. It was only then that Evelyn noticed the bandages wrapped around Hill's eyes. Blood seeped through the fabric, sliding down her cheeks like crimson tears. "If what you're saying is true, then take me to see him," Hill requested, "to meet my friend." Evelyn leaned closer, staring at the blood-soaked bandage. "Oh dear, my lady, your eyes are so frightening." Hill fell silent, feeling Evelyn's gaze sweeping across her face. "That's not what I'm talking about." "I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep tonight," Evelyn continued. "The blood is flowing like tears, just like the vengeful ghost the Baron once described." Hill's lips twitched. "How come he told you everything? Was it really that scary?" "My lord, please don't look at me like that," Evelyn said, taking a step back. "I really don't want to dream about this." Hill frowned. Evelyn had changed. The old Evelyn was respectful and meticulous. This new version was irreverent. Displeased but knowing she needed Evelyn's help, Hill raised her hand and began to untangle the bandages. "Evelyn, look at me, I'm so miserable." The bandages fell. Evelyn saw a woman with hollow eye sockets, two dark holes staring back like an abyss. Evelyn's breath caught, her fists clenching instinctively. It was terrifying. She reached out with lightning speed, snatched the bandage, and rewrapped Hill's head securely. "My lord, how did you go blind?" Evelyn asked once the ghost was covered. "You might as well ask more tactfully." Hill suppressed her displeasure. "All right, sir," Evelyn tried again. "Are your eyes off vacation and not back yet?" Hill took a deep breath, exhausted by the change in her subordinate. Yet, strangely, this casual attitude made her feel more at ease than blind reverence. She leaned back in her chair, the firelight casting flickering shadows on her bandaged face. "These eyes are a gift for Benjamin." Evelyn's mind went blank. A buzzing sound filled her ears, a gift, gouging out her own eyes as a present. She had never witnessed such extreme emotions. She suddenly recalled a time in Frosttown when Benjamin had sealed a decayed tooth in amber and given it to her as a gift. She had thought it was just a quirk, but now she wondered, did the Baron actually enjoy this kind of thing? Evelyn's thoughts began to wander. She couldn't help but wonder how Lady Ella, Lady Livia, and even the princess and the 7 knights managed their private lives. Just thinking about it was enough to keep her awake at night. Even with her unparalleled ability to create spirit clones and blades, she felt she simply couldn't withstand that kind of lifestyle. Hill, unaware of Evelyn's internal brainstorming, watched her stand in silence. He assumed she was simply too stunned by his loss of sight to speak. "No one will believe a lord who has lost his sight." Hill's voice pulled Evelyn back. "After losing my sense of the outside world, the unease in my heart has been amplified like never before. Although I can be stubborn in front of my subordinates, to be honest, I need some help." Before they set off, Hill suggested showing Evelyn the current state of Pearl City to demonstrate the results of her governance. She asked, "Who do you think governed better, me or Benjamin?" It was clear she was confident in her abilities. Evelyn coughed twice, her tone tactful. "My lord, you'd better not humiliate yourself." Evelyn mounted her beloved chestnut mare, who snorted in displeasure at being woken from a nap. The horse flicked its tail and resignedly began to walk. Hill, accompanied by a few trusted men, boarded the carriage behind her. While the exterior looked ordinary, the inside was outfitted with thick cushions, a heater, and freshly brewed tea. They would be traveling to Frosttown via a secret route. Apart from a few inner-circle members of the Grey Eagle mercenaries, no one knew the mistress of Pearl City was leaving. Evelyn glanced back at the carriage, remembering Hill's words, "These eyes are a gift for Benjamin." She shuddered, turned back, and spurred her horse forward. Countess Danif Pascal led an old noble family in the Kingdom of Rising Wind, holding vast territories within the royal domain. Following the patriarch's ancient teachings, the family remained neutral fence-sitters, siding with whoever won and ignoring whoever lost. This flexibility had made them an evergreen fixture of the nobility. Danif had long ago realized the family's ancient indicators were outdated, but she excelled at the Pascal women's greatest trait, pretending. She pretended to obey until the elders died, then did as she pleased. However, her daughter Ella had ruined the status quo. Ella, a member of the 7 Knights, was utterly guileless. Her current behavior was essentially handing Pascal territory over to Benjamin's influence. Merchants, artisans, and soldiers from Frosttown were flooding the lands, building railways and opening shops. Danif was anxious. Her daughter's heart and the family estate had been stolen. She stood before her mirror, admiring her own ageless beauty. Unlike Ella, who drew her sword when angry, Danif knew beauty was a weapon. She decided she had to see this Benjamin for herself. the man who had bewitched her daughter and caused the Pascal estate to crumble. And perhaps she just wanted to embarrass her daughter a little. Benjamin arrived and Danif stood waiting at the gate. She wore a pale gold dress with a tight waist, her long golden hair cascading over her shoulders. Standing next to Ella, they looked more like sisters than mother and daughter, perhaps Danif even looked younger. Her confident smile froze, however, when she saw the guest in the wheelchair. Celia was looking right at her. "Countess Danif, it's been a long time," Celia said. Danif's lips twitched. "Your Highness." She shot a frantic look at Ella, asking why she hadn't mentioned the princess was coming. Ella simply shrugged. Regaining her composure, Danif flashed a confident smile and took Benjamin's hand. "Lord Blackwood, I've heard so much about you." Her voice was as soft as a spring breeze. The meeting was unexpectedly harmonious. There was no probing or confrontation. As they discussed the future cooperation between Pascal Territory and Frosttown, railways, shops, and tax divisions, Danif found herself caught up in the tangible benefits. She forgot her plan to give Benjamin a hard time. The money was simply too real to ignore. It wasn't until evening that she reluctantly let him go. "Lord Blackwood, why didn't you know me 10 years earlier?" Benjamin smiled. "It's not too late now." Danif turned to her daughter. "Ella, I've arranged for you and the Baron to share a room. In your old room, so you won't have to run around at night." Ella's face flushed deep red. "Damn it, how could you? What's wrong with me?" "I'm doing this for your sake," Danif replied. Ella turned and ran upstairs to her childhood bedroom. She found Benjamin already there, sitting in a chair and looking through her old children's picture books. "Ella, you've come at the right time," Benjamin said. "This picture book is interesting. You even keep these in your guest room." Ella didn't answer. She grabbed Benjamin's sleeve and began pulling him toward the door. "Wait, my shoes. I haven't put my shoes on yet." Sullivan's day began in the early hours of the morning. It wasn't that he wanted to get up early, it was simply that he couldn't fall asleep. Outside the window, the world was still dark and not even the roosters had crowed. He sat at his desk with 3 documents spread before him: a progress report on the railway construction, a statistical table of grain reserves, and a complaint letter from various chambers of commerce. He usually read the complaints first, then the reports, and finally the tables. By the time he finished, he felt as though his head were filled with mush. While Benjamin was away fighting in Frosttown, Sullivan managed the town according to a plan Benjamin had left behind. The plan was simple in theory: maintain stability and prevent collapse, but incredibly difficult to execute. The railway needed building, grain needed collecting, merchants needed appeasing, and the soldiers needed their pay. If anything went wrong, the responsibility rested solely on his shoulders. The hardships he endured were unknown to anyone except Evelyn, his secretary, who often seemed to split into multiple people to handle the overtime. Every morning, Sullivan felt that recommending Evelyn to Benjamin had been the best decision he ever made. Lately, he felt he no longer needed sleep. His energy was boundless, his spirit high. He joked to himself that he must possess the legendary chief administrative officer's holy body as he signed another document. As the sun rose, sunlight streamed through the window, falling on the bustling streets of Frosttown. Watching the busy figures below, a strange sense of satisfaction welled up inside him. This town was something he and Benjamin had watched grow together. However, problems remained. A letter from Lena Hawthorne in Silverstream noted that while their railway had reached the border of Blackrock, the roadbed on the other side wasn't finished. Sullivan noted a directive to build a branch line first to keep the workers busy and paid. Then there was the issue in Blackrock territory. Baron Guys reported that pointy-eared bastards from the Silver Empire had sneaked into his lands. Sullivan felt out of his depth regarding international diplomacy with elves. He didn't even know if they greeted each other with slaps or handshakes. Suspecting the letter was actually written by Alina, he sent a conservative reply, urging Guys to monitor the situation without escalating until the Baron returned. He realized the letter was a masterpiece of blame shifting, but it was the best he could do. Just as he was navigating these troubles, an envoy arrived from Prince Alkea. The middle-aged man was neither servile nor arrogant, announcing that the prince intended to accept the Baron's invitation to visit Frosttown. Alkea would bring a small entourage of 20, including his wife, and promised not to enter military zones. Sullivan nodded, his mind already racing through the logistical nightmare of security, sumptuous meals, and emergency plans. Then a second piece of news arrived. The Baron was returning and he was bringing Princess Celia with him. Sullivan was having lunch when he heard this. His chopsticks froze in midair and a piece of meat fell back onto his plate. He wiped his mouth, wondering why they didn't just bring the third prince along to make it a full family reunion. Despite the stress, he knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to determine the kingdom's future. Alkea will come to Frosttown, Benjamin said. He sat opposite Celia, his gaze fixed on a carrot held in midair by his mental control. Two small knives circled the vegetable, slicing thin pieces of skin with surgical precision. To his left lay a pile of failed radishes, his practiced tools for honing his nen blade skills. He recycled the scraps by sending them to the kitchen for soup, ensuring nothing went to waste. Celia didn't reply immediately. Benjamin thought the train's rumble had drowned him out, but then she spoke. "I really don't want to see him now." She lowered her head, her knitting needles trembling. Under the influence of her internal tension, the needle's shaft twisted into an unnatural arc. Benjamin handed her a spare thread from the sewing box. He didn't press her directly, instead asking, "What kind of person is Alkea in your eyes? As family, you certainly know him better than outsiders." Celia paused. "Family opinions aren't always accurate. I used to harbor prejudices without realizing it." Benjamin returned to his carving, the knives peeling a thin layer of radish skin into a curl. After a moment of hesitation, Celia continued, "Alkea, I've thought of him as an ambitious person since we were children. He wants everything under his control. Once something goes wrong, he flies into a rage. My third brother and I argued with him many times, but he never changed." Benjamin's knife carved petal shapes into the radish. "Prejudice is an unavoidable part of experience," he noted. "It's impossible for others to understand everything perfectly." Celia's needles moved slowly. "My bad impression probably stems from a childhood experience. I was about 10, there were forbidden places in the palace and Alkea was our leader. He'd designate targets for us to sneak into at night. One time, he chose the forbidden vault beneath the palace. We were caught immediately and brought before my father. The king had been unusually furious, locking the three siblings in solitary confinement. But Alkea sneaked out to see me that night," Celia whispered. "He insisted it was the best time to go to the forbidden library. I refused. I didn't want to upset my father further. The next day, I learned he had gone alone. Many people were imprisoned because of it. When I asked him why he did it, his answer surprised and angered me." Benjamin finished a radish rose, its petals thin as cicada wings. "What did he say?" "He said," Celia's voice hardened, "I just wanted to know why father was afraid of that place. After going there, I realized that father is old and his mind is confused. We can't let an old man with a senile mind decide the future of the kingdom." Benjamin examined his translucent radish rose. "So you're angry?" "Of course," Celia replied. "Father may not be a perfect monarch, but he has never betrayed the kingdom." Alkea shouldn't have said that. Benjamin didn't reply. He just continued carving his radish, moving on to a fresh piece. "What do you think?" Celia suddenly asked. Benjamin looked up. "What do you think? What kind of person do you think Alkea is?" Benjamin lowered his head and continued his work. "I haven't decided yet. We'll talk about it when we meet." The radish in his hand wasn't quite right. The petals lacked a natural curve and the edges remained rough. He looked at the imperfect radish rose and sighed, deciding to save it for Chesvia's dinner. He placed it next to a pile of failed attempts and glanced at Celia's lap. "Are you knitting gloves? They look very well finished." Celia held up the pure white gloves. The fingers were complete, though the wrist remained short. "I'm taking on a more challenging piece," she said with a rare hint of pride. "Not bad," Benjamin admitted, examining them. "Looks better than my radish flower." Celia gave a faint smile and returned to her knitting. Benjamin stood up, stretching. "I'm going to go for a walk on the other side." He picked up his most perfect radish rose, pushed open the carriage door, and stepped into the corridor where the clanging of wheels on rails grew louder. Aphrodite was leaning back in his seat, admiring a rose he had found. Benjamin tossed him the radish carving. It spun through the air, landing perfectly in Aphrodite's hand. "How about this one?" Benjamin asked. Aphrodite examined the gift. The petals were thin as cicada wings, layered and shimmering with a translucent luster. He brought it to his nose and inhaled. "Where did you find it?" "It's very fresh and beautiful, with water droplets still on it." He smelled it again, then frowned. "But why does it smell like radish?" It's carved from a radish, Benjamin said flatly. Aphrodite set it on the table. It's well carved, but it smells a bit hungry. Chesvia poked her head out from the front row. No problem, I'll use it to make soup later. The steam railcar screeched to a halt, wheels grinding against the rails until silence fell. As the door opened, a rush of freezing air filled the carriage. Benjamin took a deep breath, letting the cold fill his lungs. The taste of home, he whispered, eyes closed. Aphrodite followed suit, taking a deep breath and immediately coughing from the chill. Chesvia helped Ella push Celia's wheelchair onto the platform. The saintess stretched lazily, her silver hair fluttering in the wind. It's been so long since I've been back. I've been missing my soft mattress for ages. Ella pushed Celia past her without a glance. You're just being dramatic. Chesvia frowned. Why are you still here? Didn't we leave Ironforge a long time ago? I'm just visiting a friend. What's it to you? Ella scoffed, then leaned down to Celia. Let me tell you about Frost Town. Chesvia watched them walk away, then turned to Benjamin. What kind of lord dumps his territory on his steward? He's just a complete absentee landlord. Benjamin thought of Clement's deepening wrinkles back at Ironbridge when Ella had told him to take care of things. He nodded in agreement. From what he knew, Clement handled everything except the most major decisions. Ella's life as a lord was certainly easier than his. As the group reached the edge of the town, Ella was the first to cry out, I don't know the way. Benjamin was equally confused. When he had left, the ground was gravel and surrounded by wasteland. Now, rows of neat houses with hanging signs lined the streets. The roads were paved with stone slabs smoother than those in the capital, and drainage ditches ran along the roadsides. Though he had drawn the layouts himself, seeing the reality was surreal. Celia looked out from her wheelchair at the bustling people. She remembered this place as a dilapidated town of mud roads and thatched huts. Seeing this transformation, a complex mix of regret, envy, and unease welled up within her. Walter and his soldiers formed a protective circle around the group, blocking the view of curious residents. Benjamin walked in the center, listening to the clamor. He was glad no one recognized him. He wanted no grand gestures or parades. He just wanted to be home. They reached the administrative center. Ella pushed Celia forward, acting as a tour guide. This is the administrative center. That's the canteen. The food is all right. That's the training ground. And that's, she paused. What's that over there again? Celia watched, mentally overwhelmed. She knew how impoverished Frosttown had been and felt a sting of remorse for her own past incompetence. Benjamin had done a better job than she could have ever imagined. Sullivan was waiting at the entrance, his hair neatly combed. He approached Benjamin and the two shared a handshake and a brief embrace. Has Suleiman lived up to expectations? The steward joked. No need for further words, my friend, Benjamin replied. You've exceeded them. Inside the office, Evelyn was still buried in paperwork. She looked up, her eyes widening. Barren, you're finally back. Benjamin walked to her desk. You've worked hard. It's not that it's hard work, Evelyn said, her tone turning sharp. I just want to ask you, why did you organize the world's greatest martial arts tournament the moment I left the capital? It's like you're deliberately excluding me. Benjamin looked sheepish. Would you feel better if I apologized? No, Evelyn said expressionlessly, then I won't apologize. They glared at each other for a tense second before Evelyn broke into a laugh. Benjamin's tone turned serious. Next time, whatever fun things we do, I'll definitely bring you along. You said so, I said it. Sullivan coughed politely. Her Highness Celia's room is ready in the newly completed Baron's mansion, and Lady Ella, though she came uninvited, a room has also been prepared for her. What do you mean by coming uninvited? Ella shouted from the hallway. The reunion was short-lived as everyone returned to work. Chesvia went to check her lab for mold, and Ella took Celia to scout the best rooms in the mansion. Benjamin sat in his chair, leaning back with a sigh. Busy? It's good that everyone's busy. The door was pushed open by Walter, who looked like he had something to say, but he was interrupted as Sullivan entered with a stack of reports. Let's not be so formal, Benjamin said, gesturing to the chairs. Let's treat this as a break and relax. Sullivan began a rapid-fire report on railway progress, grain reserves, and merchant complaints. Time slipped away. The sky outside turned from gold to black, shadows swallowing the room until their faces were blurred in the dark. Chesvia eventually poked her head in. I've made dinner. Do you want to come? The three men stood and left the office. Benjamin was the last to leave, glancing back at the empty room before closing the door. Aphrodite walked down the main street, overwhelmed by the bustling scene of hawkers and playing children. After the wine and glory of the capital, he realized Frosttown was still the best. He felt a pang of guilt for his laziness and the unfinished church foundation he had left behind. Aphrodite, what has turned you into this? He muttered to himself, blaming the alcohol for softening his courage. He resolved to head toward the construction site to begin his penance. He stopped dead in his tracks. The foundation was gone. In its place stood a completed building with a wooden sign, Frosttown Branch Church of the Spirit Garden Church. Aphrodite, a familiar voice sounded from behind. Aphrodite turned around and saw Yolia, the bishop of the sacred spring territory, who had been safely transferred to Frosttown. He was wearing a white robe stained with lime and dirt, holding a construction trowel. Yolia, Aphrodite opened his arms, ready for a hug. Instead, Yolia reached out and punched him hard in the stomach, forcing Aphrodite to stumble back. "You lazybones," Yolia barked. Aphrodite rubbed his stomach, looking at the brand new church. He realized Yolia had built it himself. He had foolishly hoped the goddess might have made it grow from the ground to save them the trouble. Yolia pointed at the surrounding buildings. "This is a crucial moment for the Church of the Spirit Garden." Aphrodite followed his gaze, noticing the Church of the Earth Mother, the Church of the Celebration, and the Church of the Hidden all crowded together like flowers vying for attention. Other churches are recruiting believers using all sorts of despicable means. Yolia's voice grew heavy. "If our goddess is ignored, that is our sin." Aphrodite's expression turned serious. "Tell me quickly, what methods did they use?" "These people go to the market early in the morning, buy the freshest eggs, and hand them out at the church entrance while preaching." Aphrodite was shocked. What a terrifying method. It sounds like something the Lord of Silver Creek would come up with. How vicious, he thought quickly. "We'll do the same tomorrow and buy all the freshest eggs in advance." Yolia spread his hands. "Do you think I haven't thought of that? I don't have the money." Yolia's salary as an instructor was barely enough to survive, and Aphrodite was even more penniless, usually relying on Benjamin for meals. This matter needs further discussion. Aphrodite muttered, cold sweat on his brow. The next morning, Aphrodite went to Benjamin for help, only to find the office packed. Benjamin sat at the head of the table, chin resting on his hands, eyes gleaming. The others, even Princess Celia in her wheelchair, mimicked his serious posture. What happened? Aphrodite swallowed hard. Benjamin looked up. "We're discussing the future." Sullivan suggested. Benjamin continued that Frosttown might need a new name. Aphrodite pulled up a chair, his own mission forgotten. "It's that important?" "Continue." Walter spoke first. "How about Frost City? A city is bigger than a town. It sounds more imposing." Chesvia shook her head. "Too cliché." "I suggest Utopia." Benjamin quickly waved his hand. "Far from it, far from it." Sullivan interjected. "How about United City? It marks the center of the United Commune." "Too blatant," Ella countered. "It sounds like a Chamber of Commerce headquarters." "Then you pick one," Sullivan challenged. Ella thought for a moment. "Steel City. The steel of Ironforge and the coal of Frosttown together." "Do you want to move the iron collar over here?" Chesvia asked. "It sounds like you're advertising yourself." "It's a little shameless." "Who are you calling shameless?" Ella snapped, and the two began to argue. Evelyn raised her hand from the corner. "I'll take one. Cake City." The room fell silent. "Why Cake City?" Benjamin asked. "Because I want to eat cake. And anyway, the name I come up with will definitely be rejected." "Rejected," Benjamin confirmed. Evelyn shrugged. Celia put down her knitting needles. "How about the new capital? It symbolizes a new beginning." The office went silent at the weight of the suggestion. "Sounds like a knockoff," Aphrodite dared to say. "The capital is the capital. What is a new capital?" Celia smiled. "Then you take one." Aphrodite cleared his throat. "The City of Spirits." "Why should I?" Chesvia objected. "Because I'm the champion. You are the champion of the martial arts tournament, not the champion of shamelessness." Suddenly, a red rose sprouted from Diona's back. "I'll take one." "City of Red Roses. It's classy, romantic." "Rejected," Diona said, pressing the weapon back down. "On what grounds?" The rose shrieked. "Because I am the master." "You're not the master. I'm the pilot. You're the machine." "That's enough." Benjamin raised his hand. "Can't you all be serious?" The quiet lasted only a moment before the bickering resumed. Aphrodite sighed. Choosing a name was proving impossible. Benjamin watched the chaos, realizing that getting this group to agree was harder than making elves and dwarves dance together. Then a flash of inspiration struck him. Gentlemen, I have an idea, Benjamin said, stopping the argument. I believe everyone's ideas are unique. Why not extract their essence and combine them? Chesvia sighed, easier said than done. Frosttown's meaning must be preserved, Benjamin explained, nodding to Walter. So I have taken the characters for ice and snow as an extension of frost. Any objections? The group agreed it made sense. Benjamin then turned to Evelyn, who was currently eating a piece of cake, cream smeared on her lip. Miss Evelyn has worked wholeheartedly for us, Benjamin said with mock emotion. I feel guilty that I haven't made amends. Therefore, we shall take the concept of sweetness from her cake city and use the word honey. Celia liked the idea, a sweet city like a fairy tale. Chesvia, sensing the trap, looked horrified. Are you really going to tell me, right here? Benjamin gave a wicked smile. Anorlando. This is the name I created by incorporating everyone's ideas. The room fell into a stunned silence as they savored the name. Anorlando, Aphrodite whispered, his eyes welling with tears, a sweet dream for all, snow-covered, a cold yet bustling city. He was deeply moved, imagining the sweet snow and the warm fireplaces of the town. Sullivan felt it was catchy. Walter liked that it retained the ice of the north. Ella liked the city aspect and Celia found it poetic. Evelyn didn't notice the reference, she just felt a sudden craving for sweets. Chesvia could only manage a strained smile. Benjamin knew he had one. New name, new changes, Benjamin pressed on. It's time for our city to venture into the restaurant industry. Chesvia nodded. I'll take care of the lemon production line. I want to grow the sourest lemons in the kingdom. Sullivan began calculating logistics. I'll gather the manpower and shops. I'll handle the factory, Ella added, ironclad steel and Frosttown technology. Celia picked up her knitting needles again. I'll help with the publicity. I hope my identity can still come in handy. Seeing that she couldn't seem to be of much help with the administrative heavy lifting, Evelyn quickly raised her hand. I'll take care of eating. Granted, Benjamin said, dismissing her with a nod. Anorlando. The new name was posted on the bulletin board in the square. It was a huge poster designed by Chesvia and Benjamin. Celia's portrait was on the wall, holding a glass that was inexplicably transparent with a few lemon slices floating inside. Her smile was gentle and sweet, like that of a true fairy-tale princess. Next to the poster was a chubby snowman. It stood next to Celia as if asking if she wanted a drink. Things are getting better. A veteran of Frost Town stood in front of the bulletin board, looking at the poster, the snowman, and Celia's smile. His eyes were a little moist. The city is bustling and lively and things are getting better. He walked slowly away, his hands behind his back. Behind him, the sunlight shone on the poster, on Celia's smile, and on the chubby snowman. Anorlando, the four large characters gleamed in the sunlight. With the name issue resolved, before Benjamin could even get into work mode, Sullivan pulled an opened letter from the pile of documents and handed it to him. Benjamin took it and glanced at it. A group of elves had stealthily appeared in Blackrock territory, seemingly belonging to the Silver Empire. Their attire didn't resemble that of wild elves, their weapons were well-equipped and their movements were orderly. Guys had sent men to follow them for several days, discovering they were wandering around the territory, seemingly searching for something. Worse still, these elves neither stole, robbed, nor harmed anyone. Gus, or rather Elena, worried that taking action rashly would cause unnecessary trouble, so she wrote to ask for his opinion. My initial advice was to keep an eye on them and not to act rashly. Now that you're back, it's naturally up to you to make the decision, Sullivan noted. Benjamin read the letter, pondered for a moment, and then said, since they're already here, let's invite them over as guests. Treat them like guests and make sure they return safely without forgetting anyone. Simply having Gus send people to keep an eye on them won't yield any results. He looked up and asked, where's Diona? It's on the first floor, Sullivan said. Have him come here. Diona arrived quickly and Benjamin briefly explained the situation. Diona listened and replied, understood, bring everyone back, make sure no one is missed. After saying that, he turned to leave. Wait a minute, Benjamin called after him. Remember to take the railcar, it'll be faster. Also, tell Gus about Alkea's coming to Frosttown. If he's interested, invite them over too. Invite both of them. Diona nodded again, this time without turning around, and walked away. Red Rose sprang off his back and waved the tip of her gun at Benjamin. Barren, rest assured, with me watching over things, nothing will go wrong. Benjamin looked at the closed door and thought that with the sentient weapon watching over things, things were more likely to go wrong. Chesvia, however, had long been restless. She hadn't been involved much in the naming process. The name Anorlando still made her feel that the Baron had long wanted to enter the kingdom's catering industry. What she was thinking about was the ruins in the back mountain, the 7th revival facility. Ever since she obtained a large amount of data from the capital, she had been researching those pseudo-magic technologies. Recently, she had finally made some progress, and it was time to verify them using the machines preserved in the ruins. I'll go to the back hill. Those machines are just gathering dust there, why don't I give them a try? Chesvia said to Benjamin. Just in case, Benjamin suggested, I'll go with you. Chesvia looked at him. There's no need to make such a fuss, just in case. Benjamin had already walked out. Getting involved with wizards always leads to trouble. He called Ella, Aphrodite, and even pushed Celia along. A large group of them marched in a grand procession towards the back of the mountain. Chesvia walked at the front, her long silver hair fluttering in the wind, her steps light and quick. She glanced back at the group behind her and sighed, I'm just going to turn on a machine. This is called better safe than sorry. You look so excited, it's like you're taking a bunch of kids on a picnic. The entrance to the 7th resuscitation facility was on a rock face behind the mountain, blocked by an iron gate. 2 rows of soldiers stood guard at the entrance, and when they saw Benjamin arrive, they stood at attention and saluted. The interior of the facility, after renovations by Benjamin and Chesvia, was no longer the gloomy and terrifying place it once was. The walls had been reinforced, the floors cleaned, and the cluttered equipment had been put in its proper place. Some rooms were furnished with tables, chairs, and bookshelves to store documents and artifacts unearthed from the ruins. This had become the underground facility of the newly formed Anorlando. Chesvia walked through the corridor and into the central control room. Benjamin stood beside her, looking at the massive machine in front of them. Can it spin? Theoretically, it's possible. Chesvia pulled a handwritten notebook from her bosom and turned to a page. But it requires dust crystals. The purity must be high. Ordinary dust crystal fragments won't do. Dust crystals are plentiful, Benjamin said. The Ironlord generously provided them. Ella proudly declared, you won't find anything purer in the entire kingdom. That's good. Chesvia closed the notebook. Celia was pushed by Ella as they spun around the hall. They stopped in front of a wall where a huge structural diagram hung, showing a cross-section of the facility. While everyone's attention was drawn elsewhere, Chesvia leaned close to Benjamin and asked, do you remember that thing? Which one? The viscera of the goddess of magic, the one you call placed in another dimension. Benjamin certainly remembered, the magic goddess's internal organs, the visible yet intangible remains of his own mind blade. It was also his first meeting with Anrise. What's wrong with that thing? I've recently had a new idea. Perhaps the 7th recovery facility is actually the one that's been handled the best of the 9. Placing the goddess's remains in a place inaccessible to the material world will prevent them from being easily touched and will also prevent the internal power from leaking out. If we master the method of opening it, I plan to put the remains we have collected inside and seal them away, instead of carrying them with us. Blood, hair, uterus, internal organs. They had now collected 4 of the 9 remains. These items were currently carried by Chesvia, which was safe for now. Any unusual phenomena were burned with the pale purifying fire. But this was ultimately a last resort. I have no objection, Benjamin said. I've always held this view about the existence of these dangers. They may be of no use to me, but I must never let anyone else have them. I can control myself and not use these things to cause trouble or resurrect the goddess of magic, but others may not be so sure. Chesvia was even more wary in this regard, perhaps because she retained some of the pale goddess's memories, and she harbored deep suspicion towards both the elves and dwarves. Under Chesvia's manipulation, a stone that Benjamin called pure dust crystal was handed to Aphrodite. Aphrodite held the crystal, feeling his palms burning, not from the crystal itself, but from his heart. He felt it was the Baron's trust in him, such an important task he wouldn't trust anyone else with. He straightened his back and strode into the depths of the facility. He was there to activate the long-dormant revival facilities to get those machines running again. Then he saw Benjamin and the others hiding behind a metal cabinet, looking as if they were afraid something might happen. Benjamin crouched behind the cabinet, only half his head showing. Chesvia crouched beside him, holding a notebook. Ella crouched further back, her hands covering her head. Benjamin was still waving from behind. "Hurry up, we're waiting for you." Aphrodite stared at the row of heads behind the metal cabinet for a moment in silence. Then he turned and walked to the recess. He put the pure dust crystal inside. Although the shape wasn't quite right, he managed to shove it in with incredible force. He put the lid on as Chesvia had instructed and then pressed the start button next to it. With a slight buzzing sound, Aphrodite instantly collapsed to the ground. He held his head in his hands and waited for a long time. The explosion he had imagined didn't happen. Instead, light shone from the ceiling, illuminating the room, the hallway, and every corner. Aphrodite lay on the ground, head tilted back, gazing at the glowing walls. "Is this a miracle of the goddess?" he murmured. He stood up and reached out to touch the walls. The walls were glowing. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was the glass tubes embedded in them that were emitting light. The light stretched along the corridor like a luminous river, flowing deep into the facility. Others also emerged from behind the cabinet, astonished by the incredible light. Only Benjamin and Chesvia felt nostalgic when they looked at the light. Benjamin stood at the edge of the room, looking at the glowing glass tubes, at the bright, even light. Images flashed through his mind, fluorescent lights and office computer screens used for late-night work. Those images were now somewhat blurred, but he remembered that feeling. The feeling of staying up all night under the lights, the feeling of having sore eyes and thinking, "Just a little longer and I'll be off work." "It feels like a dream," Benjamin said. "I'm feeling very touched." Chesvia continued, "Me too." Then she shook her head, "But don't get too excited. As I said before, the wizard's research into pseudo-magic technology is limited to this. It doesn't feel as useful as electricity." She immediately shook her head with a smile, denying her own words. "What am I talking about? Others may not understand, but don't I? The energy emitted by the dust crystal is the manifestation of electrical energy in this world." "You mean electricity and magic are the same thing in this world?" Chesvia nodded. "This is my understanding from when I was the pale goddess. Although there are some deviations, it should be roughly correct. I know what you're thinking right now. Don't worry, as long as the wizards aren't committing academic fraud, there's no need to worry about the dust crystals being depleted as an energy source. As long as magic, electricity, and souls exist, the birth of dust crystals will never cease. As for the interval between births, that's something we'll have to figure out ourselves." Benjamin walked over to the other people who were waving at him and joined them in this place that he had visited countless times before, but now felt completely refreshed. They arrived at the facility's dining room, where Benjamin was surprised to find a device that looked remarkably like a microwave oven still in working order. It was square-shaped, featuring a glass door and several control knobs on the side. Though its internal principles likely differed from the appliances of his past life, its function was identical. Benjamin quickly instructed his subordinates to bring some food so he could demonstrate the device. He placed a bowl of cold soup inside, closed the door, and turned the knob. After a short wait, he opened the door and retrieved the bowl. The soup was steaming hot, forcing him to pull his hand away from the heat. Ella's eyes lit up with excitement. "How are these things made?" she asked loudly. "I'm going to build them like crazy." Benjamin looked at her and shook his head. "You'll have to work with Chesvia on this. There's really not much I can do to help you in this regard." "Okay," Ella replied, her expression shifting to one of mild disgust at the prospect of more administrative collaboration. Meanwhile, in Blackrock territory, Diona and Guys had located the elves from the Silver Empire. Finding them had been trivial. The elves made no effort to hide, appearing openly on the railcars used to transport iron ore. Several of them sat atop an open-top freight car, gesturing and speaking in Elvish as if they were tourists on an exciting excursion. Nearby, the local miners lay motionless on the ground. Guys's face darkened with rage. He already harbored a deep dislike for the pointy-eared bastards, and if Elena hadn't restrained him earlier, he would have locked them up already. Seeing the unconscious miners was the final straw. He shouldered his sword and strode toward the railcar. Red Rose sprang from Diona's back, shouting, "Charge, take them down." Diona quickly caught up to Guys, reaching out to block his path. "Lord Guys, please don't rush." He pointed toward the fallen workers. The miners' chests were still rising and falling. They were merely unconscious. The elves noticed them and began whispering in Elvish, their faces twisted into condescending half-smiles. Guys, unable to understand the language, felt his temper rising at their tone. "What are they saying?" he asked Diona, knowing the warrior understood a bit of their tongue. "What are those pointy-eared ones saying? They're laughing at you for looking like an orc," Diona muttered to himself, though his expression told Guys everything he needed to know. Guys took a deep breath. "Tell them." Diona stepped forward, speaking in a heavy southern elvish accent. He demanded to know what they were doing in their territory. The elves were briefly surprised to hear a human speak their language, but the leader, a handsome young man, quickly regained his composure. "We heard that humans have some interesting toys, so we came to take a look," the elf said, his gaze sweeping over the railcar and the distant mine. "It's really nice," Diona gestured to the miners. "What happened to them?" The leading elf waved a dismissive hand. "Please don't misunderstand, they're still alive. It's just that one of our friends got too excited and released a little bit of elven magic, but we can't really blame ourselves. These humans make such a racket and shout whenever they see us." The red rose on Diona's back turned serious. "Is he provoking us? You can understand Elvish too?" Diona asked. "I am fluent in the languages of all the races on this land," Red Rose replied, "but forget about that for now. To be honest, these elves are acting strangely." "Don't hold back, take them down." Benjamin's orders had been to invite the elves back, but the method was left to Diona's discretion. Seeing Diona readying his weapon, the elves struck first. The golden-haired leader raised his hand, releasing 5 arrows simultaneously aimed at Diona's vitals. The stereotype of elven archery was well earned, but Diona had fought the wild elves of the southern rainforests. Compared to those who shot poisoned barbs from behind leaves or disguised themselves as trees, these Silver Empire elves were straightforward. Diona twirled Red Rose, the spear tip drawing a circle that effortlessly deflected all 5 arrows. "The elven bow is outdated," Diona said, signaling the soldiers behind him. "Let me show you weapons that are at the forefront of the world." The soldiers pulled their triggers, unleashing a rain of bolts from steam-powered repeating crossbows. While lacking the pinpoint accuracy of elven bows, the sheer volume of fire was overwhelming. Several elves were struck in non-vital areas and collapsed, wailing. The leading elf summoned a shield of dense, intertwined vines from the ground to block the bolts. Diona's first thought was of Aphrodite's Nen blade, but the magic changed. The vines transformed into lashing tentacles that morphed into emerald-green venomous snakes in midair. Red Rose slashed through the air, its tip creating a vacuum that sucked the snakes into the weapon like a bottomless pit. The sentient spear made a chewing sound. "His taste is different from Nyanran's. Capture him and the Baron will reward you handsomely." The elf leader, now desperate, began a long chant to summon water spheres and energy missiles. Red Rose neutralized them all with a touch. The spear withered the vines, evaporated the water, and dissipated the energy. "Guess why I'm called the demon-slaying Red Rose," the weapon taunted. Diona didn't wait for the elf to finish his next spell. He lashed out with the spear shaft, striking the back of the elf's head with a sickening thud. The leader's eyes rolled back and he collapsed. "Take them all back," Diona ordered as his subordinates moved in to bind the prisoners. Even as he was tied, the leader screamed in human tongue, "Do you know who I am? I'm a prominent figure in the Empire, my family." Guys watched the entire display in silence. He had fought many spirit blade users, but these elven tricks were different, flashy, but weak. "Have you seen those abilities before?" he asked Diona. "Never," Diona replied. "Not a Nen blade, I don't think so." Guys stroked his chin. "What is that?" "I don't know, I'm just a military officer," Diona said. "How about we go ask the Baron together?" Guys agreed. He hadn't seen Benjamin in some time, and he had a personal matter regarding Elena that required a doctor's expertise. The little problem Guys mentioned was evident in Elena's slightly protruding belly. Benjamin sat in his office, watching as Chesvia performed a pulse diagnosis on Elena. Ella watched the scene with intense curiosity, occasionally glancing at Benjamin before shyly looking away. "Your wife is eating very well," Benjamin remarked. Guys looked at him flatly. "Can you be serious?" "Sorry," Benjamin said, feeling uncharacteristically awkward. "I'm just a little surprised. Someone I know suddenly having a child. It reminds me of my parents." He coughed to regain his composure. "Congratulations, I trust Chesvia's skills implicitly." As the women focused on Elena, Guys leaned in and lowered his voice. "Interested in being the godfather of my child after he's born?" Benjamin pointed to his own nose in shock. "Me? In terms of both status and position, there is no one more suitable, Guys insisted. I remember you weren't religious at all, Benjamin noted. Guys shrugged with feigned seriousness. If you want, I can go and believe in one right now. Your local goddess of the spirit garden seems pretty good to me. It was Alina's idea. She felt it would deepen our connection. My old mercenary friends are all dead or gone. I need to think about it, Benjamin stammered. No rush, Guys said, his eyes scanning the room, but if there's a godfather, the child needs a godmother too. Who here seems suitable? Benjamin's expression hardened. Hey, this isn't the place for you to stir up trouble. She's 5 months along, Chesvia said, her voice grave. Her fingers remained pressed against Alina's wrist, her brow deeply furrowed. Alina's pelvis is narrower than average. If she doesn't take good care of herself, there's a possibility of a difficult birth. She looked up, her gaze sharp as she called out to Gus, who was distracted by a conversation with Benjamin. This is no joke, all of you come here. The phrase difficult childbirth hit Gus like a physical blow. His smile vanished instantly, the light in his eyes dimming as he rushed to Alina's side and took her hand. It was the very fear of such a complication that had kept them from having children for years. A momentary lapse in judgment 6 months prior had led them here, and while birth was dangerous, Gus knew an abortion at this stage was even more perilous. He had pinned all his hopes on Chesvia's return. Seeing the grim expressions on the men's faces, Chesvia sighed. That's the worst-case scenario. Don't make it sound like we're preparing for Alina's funeral. Alina gently tapped Gus's head, offering a small smile. Trust Minister Chesvia's abilities. I'm not afraid, so what are you afraid of? Gus didn't answer, though his shoulders lost some of their tension. Chesvia insisted that Alina remain in Anor Londo until the delivery to ensure immediate medical intervention if needed. Neither Gus nor Alina argued. Ella, fascinated by the prospect of a new species growing inside Alina, immediately moved a chair to sit beside her, staring intently at her belly until Alina uncomfortably shifted away. Princess Celia joined the group, offering to sew swaddling clothes and garments for the child. Her needlework had reached a professional level, and despite Alina's polite protests about troubling royalty, Celia was already taking measurements. As the domestic scene unfolded, Alina's gaze drifted to the window, landing on a massive poster in the square. What is this? She asked, pointing. The poster featured a chubby snowman in a red scarf alongside a smiling Princess Celia, both holding cups. The text read, Anor Londo, sweetening your every day. This is the image ambassador for Anor Londo, Benjamin explained. The tentative pairing is the Snow Queen and Celia. Alina noticed the snowman even shared Celia's light pink hair color and hairstyle. Your Highness has no objections? Celia smiled warmly. The people like it, so why would I? If it makes everyone laugh, I'm happy. Alina looked at the poster one last time, wondering what Prince Alkia would think of his sister becoming a commercial mascot. Benjamin and Gus moved to the interrogation of the captured elves. Their injuries were minor, but their arrogance remained intact. Only the leader spoke common, but his pride made him easy prey for Benjamin's mind-reading blade. Benjamin sat opposite the blonde elf, staring him down until the elf finally looked away. Name, Benjamin demanded. The elf remained silent. The passion fruit family, Barnet passion fruit, Benjamin said coolly, leaning back. His father is the third son of the current patriarch. His mother is the youngest daughter of the Apple family. Do I need to continue? Barnet's pupils contracted in a visible pupil earthquake. Gus, watching from the side, was impressed by how quickly Benjamin extracted information without even waiting for a verbal response. If you don't need me to ask anything, let me beat him for a few days, Gus suggested. Then he'll answer whatever I know, Benjamin laughed. No need to waste time. Their origins aren't as complex as we feared. They aren't spies, they're just a group of young noblemen from the Silver Empire. They heard rumors of something new in the Kingdom of Rising Wind and crossed the Grey Whisper Mountains to see it for themselves. Just for that, Gus asked, incredulous. There's another reason, Benjamin added. These young masters came all the way here to show off their magic. Gus frowned. Magic, like the psychic blade? In a way, Benjamin replied. But the bad news is that magic is common in the Silver Empire, and the possibility of humans mastering it is almost zero. Gus's face darkened. Then aren't we at a total disadvantage? Benjamin didn't answer immediately. He looked out the window at the poster of Celia and the snowman. Not necessarily. We'll talk more when Alkea arrives. He can't stay out of this. When elves cross the border, they cross the western border. Queen Hurissa had returned to her capital with several steam engines in tow. Her craftsmen were already swarming the machines, their eyes shining at the cold iron shells. Before she could even change, a messenger with a beard longer than his arm arrived, his expression grave. "Your Majesty," the messenger rasped, "your neighbor has been invaded by humans." Hurissa's brow furrowed. She thought of Benjamin and the tournament. "Are you sure? That country is in the middle of a civil war." "I would not joke about this," the envoy insisted. "They are wreaking havoc in our country as we speak." Hurissa sighed, deciding to send the National Guard with supplies. As the messenger withdrew, she sat on her throne, troubled. If humans were truly attacking, the alliance of dwarven nations would likely launch a full-scale counterattack, an opportunity many had been waiting for. Little Edith peeked from behind the throne and climbed into her mother's lap. "You're lying. Every time you say it's nothing, it means there's a big problem." Snow fell in thick sheets, driven by a wind that made it impossible to see. A long procession of refugees, wrapped in tattered cotton, moved toward the dwarven territory. They were fleeing the north, drawn by a rumor of a goddess who had descended to earth, a goddess who promised bodies free from cold and hunger. A middle-aged man carried a child with purple lips on his back, his wife following with an infant. They noticed two dwarfs walking among them, carrying bulging bundles and moving with surprising speed. "Are you also on a pilgrimage?" the male dwarf asked. His voice was rough, but he spoke the human tongue. The man remained silent, wary of strangers. The female dwarf nudged her companion. "Don't ask anymore, he doesn't want to talk." After a long silence, the human woman finally spoke. You came here because you couldn't survive either." The male dwarf raised an arm, showing a missing hand. "Our livelihood is gone, there's no way out. I heard the goddess blesses everyone, human or dwarf." "Do you think the rumors are true?" the man asked. "I don't know," the dwarf replied, "but it's better than waiting to die." The dwarf volunteered to lead the way through the high mountains and deep snow. Beyond the border, there were no soldiers from the north. There, they hoped to find safety. The refugee leader guided his group through a narrow valley, skirting a steep cliff before emerging into a vast, white snowfield. At the edge of the expanse, a silent crowd waited. They were dressed in thin, inadequate clothing, yet none of them shivered. Their faces bore no marks of frostbite, and their eyes burned with a sacred, unsettling flame. They were unfazed by the cold, exactly as the rumors had whispered. Among them were dwarves, elves, and others whose races had become indistinguishable. They stood in eerie harmony, devoid of hostility, like a gathering of silent pilgrims. The newly arrived refugees froze, caught between the urge to flee and the inability to move forward. Then the silent crowd shifted, parting to create a path that stretched into the deepest part of the snowfield. The human couple and the two dwarves shared a hesitant glance before stepping onto the road. At the end of that path, they went to meet their god. Since Elena had moved into the administrative center, life had become significantly busier. Her growing belly commanded respect. People instinctively made way for her, constantly offering seats and rest. Though the repetitive questions occasionally annoyed her, she kept a smile on her face. Ella was the most captivated. Having never been close to a pregnant woman, she found the physical changes fascinating. She followed Elena like a curious cat, mimicking her movements, sitting when she sat, standing when she stood, and even yawning in sync. As they sat together on the sofa, Ella's eyes were glued to Elena's stomach. "It moved," Ella whispered suddenly. Elena glanced down. "No, it moved, I just saw it." "That's just breathing," Elena corrected. "Does your breathing become bloated? Should it?" Elena sighed. Chesvia said it was intestinal peristalsis. Ella didn't understand the medical term, but she remained mesmerized. She reached out tentatively, withdrew, then finally placed her hand gently on Elena's stomach. She held her breath, convinced she could feel a tiny, rhythmic heartbeat against her palm. When she finally pulled her hand away, her expression was uncharacteristically somber. "What's wrong?" Elena asked. Ella shook her head, walking to the window to watch the bustle of the city outside. Elena watched her, a small smile playing on her lips. "Do you have feelings for him?" Ella stiffened. "What are you thinking?" "Exactly what you're thinking, no. I have absolutely no feelings for him," Ella snapped, her voice rising. "He's just a lowly servant. He always was and he always will be." Elena chuckled softly. "There are quite a few people who share those thoughts. Ella turned, suddenly alert. Who, Minister Chesvia? Ella's face twisted in disgust. Her, yes. By the way, I actually support Minister Chesvia, Elena added playfully. Ella looked as if she had been struck. You, whose side are you on? Neither, Elena smiled. I just think Minister Chesvia is a better match for him. A good match? Are you kidding me? Ella paced the room in a frantic circle, sitting and standing in rapid succession. You, what about me? Elena tilted her head innocently. I'm going to get some water, Ella cried, fleeing the room as if escaping a fire. Benjamin and Chesvia spent the entire day buried in the lab. The table was a graveyard of tools and parts, centered around a magic converter they had salvaged from the mountain facility. Its casing was stripped away, exposing a chaotic nest of wiring. Benjamin, pliers in hand, felt a strange sense of nostalgia for his past life's engineering classes. Connect the red thread to the red end and the black thread to the black end, Chesvia directed. I know. If you know, why are you just standing there? I'm trying to remember, Benjamin muttered, picking up a wire. Are you sure this thing won't explode? I'm not really sure. They had fashioned the light bulbs themselves. The circuitry utilized materials with high magical affinity, while the glass casings had been blown by a pastor from the Celebration Church, men who seemed capable of anything except actual religious work. The filament, a special alloy, had been drawn by Kislev. Benjamin handled the installation, meticulously applying his knowledge of parallel and series circuits. When the first magic lamp finally flickered to life, the laboratory was bathed in a steady, artificial glow. It's done, Chesvia said, clapping her hands. Benjamin stared at the light. He thought of the cities from his previous world, where streetlights banished the darkness of night. This land had always been dark, but now the first light had been struck. Parallel or series? Chesvia asked. The circuit. Did you connect it in parallel or in series? Benjamin hesitated. Parallel, are you sure? Now that you've asked, I'm not sure anymore. Chesvia sighed. With our mediocre skills, it'll be a long time before we can teach others. Benjamin remained optimistic. As long as we have enough people, a few geniuses are bound to emerge. Benjamin had invited Lena Hawthorne to visit Anner Londo, fulfilling a promise to her father, Erwin. Between dealing with elven diplomats and researching magic lamps, he hadn't been able to visit Silverbrook, so he brought the guest to him. Welcome, Benjamin greeted her as she stepped onto the platform. Lena looked around at the rapidly changing skyline. You guys really do have something new every month. The vibrant scene of all things flourishing is right before our eyes, Benjamin replied. As they walked toward the administrative center, Lena paused. Frosttown. No, what is it called now? Anner Londo, Benjamin said, but you can call it Icy Valley if you prefer. It's quite fitting. They entered the drawing room where tea was waiting. Lena's gaze drifted to a massive advertising poster outside the window. It depicted Princess Celia holding a cup with a gentle smile, standing next to a snowman that shared her exact hairstyle. That's, Lena pointed, our ambassador, Benjamin said smoothly. Princess Celia, right, and that snowman, please address him as His Majesty, the Supreme and Great First King of our Kingdom of Lingfeng, Benjamin stated with mock solemnity. Lena blinked. I don't quite understand. That great man appeared in my dream last night with a divine revelation, Benjamin continued. He said to me, repent. Lena stared at him in silence, and Her Highness has no objections to this. She said it was something the people liked and welcomed. Lena's 3-day visit was a series of revelations. On the first day, she marveled at the magic lamps in the lobby that burned without fuel. On the second day, she encountered Celia herself in a corridor. The legendary princess was in her wheelchair, pale pink hair cascading down, focused intently on her knitting needles. Your Highness, Lena bowed, feeling clumsy. Celia looked up. Who are you? Lena Hawthorne, daughter of Lord Erwin Hawthorne. Celia nodded. I know your father. He's an interesting man. She paused, then asked, can you knit a sweater? A little. Don't be nervous, Celia said. I am not a princess right now, but a tailor looking to improve. We can discuss the subject. Lena was stunned. The woman who had supposedly slain enemies with peerless grace was now asking for knitting tips. By the third day, Lena felt a genuine pang of reluctance to leave. Standing on the platform, she noted how the steam railcars had turned a 2-day horse ride into a mere half-day trip. Convenient transportation is essential for rapid development, Benjamin noted as he saw her off. The rail network you and Lady Ella built has transformed everything, Lena admitted. My father says if I don't keep up with you, I'll be left behind. I don't want to be left behind. I will visit often. Evelyn had finally brought Hill from the north to the royal territory. She had traded the old carriage for the efficiency of the steam railcar, though she ensured her beloved chestnut mare was well cared for in the animal carriage. The mare looked down at her hay, then glanced at the chickens and pigs sharing her space. Her gaze was stern, as if asserting her dominance. She suddenly lashed out with a hind leg, kicking a nearby chicken cage. As the birds erupted into a panicked flurry of feathers and clucking, the mare withdrew her leg, satisfied. If she couldn't discipline her master, she would at least keep the livestock in line. Inside the passenger carriage, Hill sat listening to the mechanical hum of the vehicle. A house that walks on its own, her subordinates had called it. She waited in the darkness of her blindness, feeling the vibration of progress beneath her feet. The house was long and narrow, with a few windows that framed rapidly receding fields and woods. Hill couldn't see them, but she could sense the speed. It was much faster than a carriage, so fast that she could feel the wind rushing in through the cracks in the windows and hitting her face. "This is the railcar?" Hill asked. "Yes." Evelyn came in from the carriage door. She settled the chestnut mare, brushed the hay off her body, and sat down opposite Hill. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Hill paused for a moment before replying. "Soon. Of course it's fast," Evelyn said with a hint of pride, "much faster than a carriage. And it's stable, not bumpy at all. If you feel uncomfortable, you can lie down and take a nap. It'll still be several hours to Anner Londo." Hill didn't lie down. She leaned back in her seat, listening to the sound of the wheels rolling over the rails. The others in the carriage began bombarding Evelyn with questions. What was Frosttown like? Were there many strange things there? Was it as magical as the railcar? Evelyn smiled wryly, knowing she was waiting for those incredibly curious expressions on their faces. Frosthold, she cleared her throat, is now officially called Anner Londo, but popularly known as Irithyll of the Valley. It's a high society. High society? Someone asked. Yes. Evelyn's voice became even more smug. Do you know what high society is? It's when you can feel like someone important just by walking down the street. Do you know what the streets of Anner Londo are paved with? Cobblestones. Neat rows of cobblestones, one by one, fit together perfectly. They're comfortable to walk on, don't get muddy, and don't flood when it rains. Do you know what the houses are made of? Red brick, gray tiles, concrete, and even glass. Every single one is equally beautiful. Do you know what nights are like in Anner Londo now? Bright, bright everywhere. The walls are embedded with glowing glass tubes, making it as bright as day. Thieves don't dare go there because there's nowhere to hide. In truth, Evelyn was exaggerating. Benjamin hadn't even finished installing the light bulbs in the administration center yet. But her subordinates listened intently. Anything else? Someone asked. There's more, there's plenty more. Evelyn raised her eyebrows and continued her boasting. She raved about the factories of Anner Londo, saying that the machines there operated on their own, requiring neither human nor animal power. All that was needed was to feed coal into the furnaces, and production was fully automated. She boasted about the farms, saying that crops there could be grown from a handful of seeds, yielding 20 times the output of ordinary farms. She raved about the taverns, saying that the wine there was 100 times better than that of the north. And of course, there are the indispensable churches, she added. On one particular street, you can find almost every church you can imagine. It's currently one of the most famous tourist attractions. Hill's subordinates were even more excited. Can we go for a tour? Certainly. May I go in and pray? Certainly. Evelyn also mentioned that it was now common practice at the church to give out eggs. If you get them early, you can collect free eggs at the church entrance, and the quality is guaranteed to be the best that day. I go to collect several boxes every day. In short, the more she boasted, the more outrageous it became, and the more her subordinates listened, the more captivated they became. Even Hill couldn't help but speak up. How much of what you've said is true? Her voice was calm. Evelyn stated unequivocally, 99%. Another gasp of surprise rippled through the carriage. The head of psychological counseling at Anner Londo was known for his helpfulness, though this might have been related to the fact that he had a lot of free time. His office was on the 3rd floor of the administrative center, but the number of believers at the Spirit Garden Church was never large. Now that people's lives had improved, even fewer were willing to come to a psychologist to confide their troubles. Aphrodite sat in his office every day brewing a pot of wine, waiting for half a day without seeing a single person. Since his colleague Yolia arrived, he had been diligent and helpful. Every morning before dawn, Yolia would act as an instructor for the soldiers, then move bricks to expand the church, and in the afternoon he would help raise griffins. Seeing how busy Yolia was, Aphrodite felt it was inappropriate to stay in the office any longer. He had no choice but to get to work. He was currently assisting with the breeding of griffins in the valley. The griffins were provided as cubs by the Rock Cliff territory, and things were finally starting to get on track. As one of the very few large flying beasts that could be domesticated, the griffin was invaluable. It could carry people, scout enemy positions, and drop weapons from the air. Aphrodite was currently feeding the griffin cubs. Although they were called cubs, they were already larger than large dogs. They swarmed around him, and suddenly he was pinned down by 5 or 6 of them. Their faces, necks, and hands were covered in saliva. He pushed one away, but another pounced. Their tongues had barbs that stung his face as they licked him. Aphrodite staggered from side to side, pushing away the griffins while yelling, "Stop licking my face! Stop licking my face!" The griffins ignored him and licked even more enthusiastically. Anor is a wonderful place, Aphrodite thought to himself as a little griffin licked his cheek. Perhaps we could bring the Pope here to retire. This is supposedly a place blessed by the goddess. The Pope would probably be quite happy to live here. Thinking of this, Aphrodite couldn't help but fantasize. His Holiness the Pope was an unparalleled swordsman. Perhaps he could come here and teach. In Aphrodite's opinion, the only one who could compare was Princess Celia. He imagined the Holy Garden Pope having his own papal knights, perhaps with cool names like Conqueror Knight or Steam Knight. However, the ancestral precepts of the Spirit Garden prohibited political involvement. If the Pope found out about his ideas, he might be the first one to be struck down. He sighed and stroked the head of the smallest griffin in his arms. The griffin squinted and purred like a large cat. He wondered how the Pope was doing these days. After several transfers, Evelyn and Hill finally arrived at the legendary Anor. When they got off the railcar, the platform was packed. Hill couldn't see, but she could hear the cacophony of voices and footsteps. "We're here, we're here." Evelyn stood on the platform, arms outstretched, taking a deep breath of the cold air. "This is Anor." Hill got out of the car, her eyes still bandaged. She stood there, feeling the cobblestone path beneath her feet, a lively place. Of course, Evelyn walked over to her. "This is high society." They went into the administrative center. Evelyn told Hill's subordinates to wander around as they pleased. The people left happily. Some were going to the beverage shop Celia endorsed, some to the church to collect eggs, and others to the square to see the huge promotional poster. They chattered away like a flock of birds released from their cages. The corridor was quiet, save for the sound of Evelyn and Hill's footsteps. Hill had her hand on Evelyn's shoulder as she walked. Evelyn pushed open the office door. "We're here." Benjamin was there with Ella and Celia nearby. "It's been a long time," Hill said first. Benjamin looked at her. He already knew about Hill's situation from Evelyn, but seeing her in person, he couldn't help but feel angry. "I told you, it's dangerous in there." Hill wanted to offer the explanation she had been pondering, why she went to the ruins and why she obtained the eyes, but facing Benjamin, those words were difficult to utter. Celia broke the stiff atmosphere. "Sit down." Her voice was very gentle, like she was coaxing a child. Evelyn helped Hill sit down. Hill could sense that many people were watching her. "Your eyes," Ella's voice came from beside her, "are they really blind?" "Ella," Benjamin glared at her. "I was just asking." Ella sighed, blinded but still useful. Hill took a small box from her bosom and placed it on the table. Opening the lid, she revealed 2 round objects. They were eyes, beautiful eyes, their allure undiminished even when bloodied. They glowed faintly in the box like 2 imprisoned stars. "This is a little something for you," Hill said. Benjamin looked at those 2 eyes and remained silent for a long time before saying, "I'll accept it." He closed the box and placed it on the table. Hill didn't ask him what he would do with it. Some things didn't need explaining. The office was warm, the firewood crackling softly. "What are your plans next?" Benjamin asked. Hill seemed to be in a good mood. "I'll be a guest in your city for a while and learn about the advanced ideas of our Baron. The fact that you can still laugh means you're doing all right," Benjamin said. "I'll have Chesvia check your eyes later. I don't know if they can be put back in." When Benjamin took Hill to find Chesvia, the Saintess was still struggling with the simulated magic light bulb. The testing area reeked of burning and several burnt-out bulbs lay on the table. Chesvia stood in front of her workbench, holding a newly made bulb and examining it against the light before writing in a notebook. She wanted to use her mind to design streetlights for Anor Londo. The engineering team was eager to get started, having drawn dozens of blueprints, just waiting for results. Master Benjamin said as they entered, "Could you make a new model of prosthetic eye?" Chesvia put down the light bulb and turned around. Prosthetic eye. It's one of those fake eyes that can see things. At most, we'll give you a glass eye, Chesvia replied. That's all we can do. Chesvia put down her tools and walked over to Hill, beginning a careful examination. She unwrapped the bandages from Hill's face, gently prying open the edges of the hollow eye sockets. Using transparent threads formed from her nen blades, she probed the wounds, touching the inner walls with surgical precision. Hill's body tensed, but she remained silent. Withdrawing her nen blade, Chesvia pondered the results. "I can cure the chronic bleeding," she said finally, "but as for creating two eyeballs out of thin air, forget it." Even the legendary Sharingan needs physical eyes to swap. She offered a small glimmer of hope. Perhaps future pseudo-magic technology can provide a solution. We'll wait and see. Hill showed no regret. The moment her eyes had been taken, she had made peace with the darkness. She was still the Lord of Pearl City, and with Benjamin's support, she would remain so. Her focus now was learning Benjamin's methods to benefit her own people. "Thanks," she said simply. Chesvia waved a hand dismissively and returned to her workbench, continuing her struggle with the prototype light bulb. As evening fell, Hill's veterans returned from the streets. These were men who had followed her since the Grey Eagle mercenary days, loyal, if uneducated. They gathered in Hill's room, excitedly discussing the wonders of Anor Londo. Some had bought lemon tea, others posters of Princess Celia, and one had even purchased a non-functional miniature magic lamp as a souvenir. That night, Evelyn's tall tales were finally put to the test. Evelyn, a young subordinate, said, holding a cup of tea, "You said this lemon tea beautifies the skin and prolongs life." "I've been drinking it all day and I don't feel any different." Evelyn didn't blink. "Longevity isn't achieved in a day. Talk to me after you've been drinking it for 10 years. "And you said the streets were paved with top-grade cold jade." Another challenged. "Your ears are playing tricks on you," Evelyn countered smoothly. "I clearly said top-quality cement bricks." "We all heard you in the carriage," the group protested. Evelyn sighed dramatically. "That was an exaggerated rhetorical device. I can't talk to you uncultured country bumpkins." The questions kept coming. They asked about the magic lamps that supposedly made the city as bright as day and the walking houses she had described. "The lamps are still in development," Evelyn explained, "and the steam railcar is exactly like a house that moves on its own. Didn't you ride it today?" "But it's not a house." Young and inexperienced, Evelyn interrupted. "Stop asking so many questions." When they pressed her about the legendary microwave, noting there was only one in the entire city and it wasn't for public use, Evelyn's lip twitched. "That's just a sample. Once mass production starts, every household will have one. I was just stating the future of Anor Londo in advance." "Who says the future of loans isn't the future?" Her colleagues looked at her in bewilderment. The hardworking, foolish Evelyn they once knew had been replaced by someone with a silver tongue and a very stubborn mouth. Hill, listening from her chair, smiled. She could perfectly imagine Evelyn's self-righteous expression. "All right," Hill said, cutting through the chatter. "Stop fooling around." The room went quiet. "What Evelyn mentioned may not exist now, but it will. We're staying here for a while. During this time, I want you to uncover every secret of the city." A subordinate chimed in. Evelyn coughed. "Are you saying that to me, the Minister of Intelligence? Do you want to meet in the underground prison tomorrow morning?" The man blanched as the others laughed. Hill waved them down. "This is my friend's territory. I want you to participate in the construction of Anor Londo and learn. It would be better if Evelyn could find you positions, otherwise you might end up as waiters at the princess's beverage shop." "Sir, those uniforms are beautiful." One young man exclaimed. "They say the princess designed them." "Shut up," Hill commanded, though she chuckled. "We're from Pearl City, we should aim higher." "Evelyn, what positions are available?" Evelyn thought for a moment. "The construction team, the farm, and the Griffin farm are all short-staffed. But can any of you build walls? Can you farm? Can you feed griffins?" Silence met her question. "If you don't know, you learn," Hill said firmly. When Evelyn first went to Frosttown, she didn't know how to be a secretary either. "And now she eats 5 meals a day." "My lord, that is slander," Evelyn cried, blushing. Lord Blackwood told me himself. Hill laughed and the room filled with cheerful noise. The next day, Evelyn delivered a formal report. Hill's veterans were currently stable, though they were mostly wandering the streets and sleeping until noon. Hill wanted them integrated into the workforce as soon as possible. Benjamin leaned back, watching Evelyn's serious face. I have no problem with them joining, but providing positions. Isn't that just using connections? I always keep the rules of Anor Londo in mind, Evelyn said solemnly. I will not favor friends or family. You're just passing the hassle to me, Benjamin retorted with a laugh. But it is a problem. Can a novice really learn anything without training? How about we do what you did to me, Evelyn suggested. Send them to the grassroots level to handle neighborhood disputes. Benjamin looked awkward. We were desperate for staff back then. Don't keep bringing that up. Nearby, Chesvia was installing a new magic-themed lamp in the office. She paused, screwdriver in hand. Why don't they come with me? She asked, turning around. I have several projects that need hard-working people. I guarantee they'll learn real skills. Benjamin snapped his fingers. My beloved consort is so thoughtful, alleviating my worries. Chesvia bowed elegantly, playing along with the courtly drama. Your Majesty is too kind. I see Eunuch Su next door is also short-handed. Perhaps we should arrange manpower for him as well. I grant your permission. Benjamin waved his hand with mock imperial force. Evelyn watched them, feeling a twinge of envy at their easy rapport. Next time, could you make me a noble consort too? She asked. You want to be a royal concubine? Benjamin asked. Yes, Evelyn said decisively. Then I bestow upon you the title of the royal guard who brings cakes, Benjamin declared. A third-rank official responsible for safeguarding my cakes from criminals. Who are the criminals? Evelyn asked. You, and where is the cake? Evelyn pressed. You need a cake to have a guard, right? Benjamin laughed heartily. What a talent. If you want to go to the store Celia endorses, just say I approved it. He then turned to the two of them. Now help me change this light bulb instead of just watching the show. Integration didn't happen overnight. While Hill and Evelyn were the intellectuals of the group, the other veterans only knew how to fight and gather intel. To take up clerical or technical posts under Chesvia or Suleiman, they had to prove themselves. They were enrolled as adult students at Anor Londo High School. The school offered evening classes ranging from literacy and arithmetic to steam dynamics and diplomatic etiquette. Even the master dwarves sent by Queen Hurissa taught there, lecturing on metallurgy after their shifts at the factory. Soon, the sound of mercenaries reciting texts echoed through Hill's hotel. Hill herself, determined to lead by example, became the first of the group to pass the rigorous examinations, proving that even a mercenary could master the pen as well as the sword. Hill was genuinely stunned to discover that Ella was an honorary professor of physics. She even attended one of the long-awaited classes. Ella stood on the podium, pointer in hand, sketching intricate diagrams on the blackboard. She lectured on steam dynamics with an expertise unparalleled in the kingdom of Lingfeng. Hill sat in the back row, her eyelids drooping as she realized for the first time how difficult learning could be. That's all for this lesson, Ella said, setting down her pointer. Class dismissed. Hill remained motionless as the other students filed out. A humbling thought crossed her mind. Was she perhaps the least educated member of the heroes' party? The elves had become increasingly unruly. Alkea sat at his desk, staring at a thick stack of reports detailing village attacks and injured subjects. From the western border to the interior, their arrogance was growing. He felt tricked. The Silver Empire seemed to treat their friendship agreement like waste paper. More worrying was the power they displayed, true magic, a force that had supposedly vanished with the Wizard Empire. Alkea knew human prosperity was built on the ruins of that era, yet magic continued to turn its back on mankind. The Silver Empire offered only platitudes while their noble youths trespassed and played at being gods. Captured elves lived in luxury, even complaining when their provided fruit wasn't fresh enough. Even Charles had shifted his focus from the royal domain to the elven threat. Alkea wanted to strike back, but the kingdom of Lingfeng was currently too fragile. He summoned his confidants, ordered the border patrols strengthened, and prepared to depart for the north. Frosttown has been renamed Anor Londo, Charles informed him with a strange expression.